sure he's right. Obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
War. This is the end game.
All right, everybody. It is Tuesday, May 13th, 2025, the 114th day of the Golden Age. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. Didn't have a show yesterday on Monday. Going to try it Tuesday and Friday this week. Next week, I'll be back for Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And then today, Wednesday being the subscriber stream. And then the week after that, Tuesday, Friday. So 3-2-3-2. We'll see if it works that way. I'm trying to devote some time to writing, and that requires focus that I'm not able to muster when I'm constantly thinking about how to set out a show rundown for 9 hours worth of shows a week, which also I'm not sure that too many people are able to consume that much in the first place. So it might just be overkill and therefore pointless. So to devote that much time and energy to something that would ultimately be pointless seems pointless. Before we get started, I see that there's already a rant in the chat over on Rumble. Mooney's mom, Frenchie, $20 catching you live today. Yippee. Well, thank you very much. All right. So we're going to talk about some fun stuff. We're going to talk about some emoluments. We're going to talk about Trump's drug pricing announcement, the China trade deal, maybe some budget stuff. That stuff's kind of boring, and I'm not sure it's going to matter a whole lot, but it's maybe worth going through because it's a narrative that's out there and getting some attention. And then we're going to get back into some geopolitics. And of course, I'll spend probably the second half of the show going through Trump's visit to Saudi Arabia, which is, in addition to the announcement with the UK last week, the pharma and drug pricing deal that Trump's setting up, and solving things with China. This is as big as it can get. Okay. This is a separation from the global order in every single part of that. And we're going to talk about that at some length today. But before we do that, now I think, realized that I blew it by not downloading the one clip that I meant to start off with as something funny. Some of you all just saw it last evening. Unbelievable. Where is it? Oh, I suck at this. I'm going to tell my friend John Harold to send it my way. And in the meantime, we will start at my second subject, and then we'll come back to it. Hold for processing. What an awful beginning to a show. All right. So instead of going with that bit of humor to begin, let's start with an endorsement that Trump put out yesterday. You know, we talked quite a bit about Trump's endorsements and his nominations, his appointments, et cetera, over the last few years. I've done entire episodes on what I think the Trump endorsement actually means. And if you're relatively new to the show, I think that it's worth going back and listening to that episode. It's important to remember that Trump is always mid-negotiation. He's always influencing leverage. Sometimes an endorsement is something that someone asked for, and Trump gets something out of that endorsement. And so he makes the deal. And, I continually say we shouldn't put too much stock in these things. It's not that I don't trust Trump, not that I don't trust the plan. It's that I don't trust the people telling me what the plan is when they don't know. And they have no idea what Trump is talking about. Okay? It's that simple. Trump can do things for a variety of reasons. To assume that it is one reason and not other reasons is totally ignorant, because you think you have some inside access to what the plan is. How is it that those people always turn out wrong? It's crazy, isn't it? And they get upset when anybody challenges that consensus viewpoint. It's weird. It's like a little commie struggle session every time. So this is Trump's endorsement yesterday. And I'm going to hope that I'm saying this man's name correctly. And I'm going to rely on my half Italianness and the couple semesters of Italian I studied in college, and assume the correct Italian pronunciation here is Ciattarelli. So Jack Ciattarelli is a terrific America First candidate running to be the next governor of a state that I love, New Jersey. Jack, who after getting to know and understand MAGA has gone all in and is now 100% plus. He is strongly supported by the most highly respected leaders in New Jersey. And as your next governor, Jack Ciattarelli will work closely with me and the Trump administration to advance our America First agenda. Jack will fight tirelessly to grow our economy, cut taxes and regulations, restore our economic power, help secure our now very secure, record-setting southern border, stop migrant crime, murderers, and other criminals from illegally entering our country, protect our great military and vets, advance American energy dominance by helping to keep the price of gasoline, oil, and all forms of energy very low, cheap, and defend our always under siege Second Amendment, which has not been attacked, amended, or changed while I was president. Also, Jack is the Republican candidate who is best positioned to stand tall against the radical left Democrats and, most importantly, ensure a big victory in this very important gubernatorial election, an election that is being closely watched by the entire world because we are ending woke and all the other nonsense that goes along with it, and nobody wants to see it come back. Jack Ciattarelli is a winner and has my complete and total endorsement. He will not let you down. Make America great again. Elect Jack Ciattarelli. Now, he says that it is being watched by the entire world. I think that if we go back through time and take notice of the times when Donald Trump says that an election is being watched by the whole world, that is generally a stolen election that he intends to expose. And I wouldn't be surprised if the same was true here. I said, I joined John Harold last night, sitting in for Zach Payne on Baseless Conspiracies, and we talked about this story a bit. And I mentioned the election from 2021. So these gubernatorial elections, some of them, some states have these off-year elections. Virginia is going to have one as well, as they did in 2021. That was the year that Glenn Youngkin won with Winsome Sears, and I think that the guy's name was Miares or something. So there were 3 big Republican wins in Virginia, fake election, called in advance by me. It was obvious that they were going to need to give a Republican an election win so that people would think that the election system is somehow fixed or legitimate, when it was so clear from 2020 that that's not the case at all and not even possible. So they gave the red team a victory in Virginia with a perfect Dominion score, again, called by me weeks in advance. You can go back and listen to the episodes and hear it for yourself. 51-49, a Dominion result. And Glenn Youngkin beat the ringer candidate, Terry McAuliffe, who was an old school Clinton hack who'd been governor of Virginia before. Very similar to Ron DeSantis beating Charlie Crist in Florida a couple years back. So that same night in 2021, Phil Murphy stole an election in New Jersey from Jack Ciattarelli. And New Jersey's supposed to be a very blue state, like we were told Virginia was. And all of a sudden, it was a very close election with this guy that no one had heard of. And Trump didn't even endorse him or support him back then. Bannon was very mild on him. They just weren't talking about this guy. But here he is again, and Trump's going all in. Now, there are a couple things to think about here. If Trump knows that the New Jersey governor's election is going to be stolen regardless, and Phil Murphy is going to be the guy that continues in New Jersey, or I don't know if they have term limits on him. I know that Glenn Youngkin does in Virginia. But whoever the Democrat candidate is, if the election's going to go for that person, then he's taking Ciattarelli, pushing him into the spotlight. And then if he loses, it's not going to be the Trump endorsement. That would be crazy. It would be because he's too establishment, because people are concerned that he is too establishment. He's too uniparty oriented, etc. A lot of people are upset with this endorsement. Apparently, they don't trust the plan this time. And it's funny. And again, I think that everybody should have whatever opinion they want. I don't think that we should judge people's faithfulness to the project based on whether or not they are able to immediately grovel before everything Trump says and does. Okay. I don't think that that's a requirement of anyone, and I would never put that on anyone. But the people who are always taking that tack are noticeably silent on this one, while people like General Flynn's son is coming out against this because they want this guy Spadilla. And again, that's fine. So if the New Jersey Democrats are stealing this election, if the Uniparty is stealing this election, no matter what, why would Trump waste a good candidate on this election? So maybe he's pushed this guy up. He's going to expose some element of the Uniparty in doing so. He's going to create a primary battle where the establishment thought they could avoid one. Perhaps, there's a lot of different ways that this could play out. But again, one of the big projects over especially the last 3 years, and we've talked about it since 2022, is rhino hunting. It's to expose the Republican establishment and take all of their up and coming stars, show them to the American public, make it obvious that most of them are just uniparty grifters and not actually America first, not MAGA candidates, not people who will prioritize the needs of the people rather than their own needs. And I think that he's been very successful in doing that. All of the up and coming stars that we saw in the last fake primary, the fake primary before that, all the people who used to get talked about as presidential candidates, all of them are kind of a joke now. And that includes Ron DeSantis. And we'll see if J.D. Vance lasts these 4 years with the reputation that the grovelers have just given him in their obedience will persist. And I kind of doubt it will. So this will be an interesting dynamic to watch as it plays out. And you got to remember, with the stolen elections, they are putting some pretty ridiculous people in office. John Fetterman in Pennsylvania, Katie Hobbs in Arizona. We've seen some really ridiculous elections go the way of the worst people in the Uniparty. And so I think it's going to be interesting to watch this play out. But again, the takeaway once again is you don't know what Trump's doing. It's okay to like the Spadilla guy and not like the Ciattarelli guy. It's totally okay. Unless you're the sort of person who grovels before everything Trump says and does. And then it's not okay. And then you have to go online and talk about how somebody's a traitor. Don't you trust Trump? Pathetic. Okay. Let us get back to my good friend John Harold bailed me out on this one. And so I just have to spend a quick moment, which I don't normally do, pulling up Fox News's The Five and Greg Gutfeld, who may or may not be watching my show and or Badlands.
Napolina Luna. All right.
Una Panoonah.
Let's try it again.
Anna Paulina Luna. All right. Anna Paulina Luna. All right.
What do you want me to say? Is that the same? I don't know. Who knows? Maybe Greg Gutfeld just likes singing her name. Could be anything. Could be anything. Otherwise, it's the fun stuff we do here actually seeping out into the larger world at some point. And I've got to say, I enjoy it. Shannon R. Bach, $5 in the chat. I definitely can consume it and probably need to get a life, but support your writing, Chris. Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's some commitment. That said, I used to listen to a few episodes of Joe Rogan a week, and those were 3-hour episodes. I would listen in my car. I would listen at the gym, whatever. So some people can do it. And if you can, by the way, more power to you. And thank you. That is an honor. But I think the general public probably can't do that. And until people solve their attention deficit problem and and don't get immediately put off by long episodes, preferring to watch some retarded TikTok take for 2.5 minutes, we're probably going to be stuck here. So, hey, it is what it is. All right, let us continue to some more. And, you know, the fun stuff here. I don't know necessarily what to make of this. Like, and when you see it, to be clear, what I mean is in what to make of it. Like, why is this the moment that we are getting something like this? This is exactly what people have talked about for a long time, but just crazy that it's so blatant. Check this out.
So this is one of the neat things about the U.S. Capitol, of course.
This is Tim Moore of North Carolina with Fox News.
This building, you know, construction started in the 1700s. And there are all sorts of little hidden passageways. You saw I just pulled this cover up. And you can see if we get the camera to come over, don't fall in. We don't need a workers' comp claim today. But you can see there's a passageway. These are long stairs that used to be here that were closed off. We're just off of what's called Statuary Hall, which at one time was the actual House chamber. So, and it's outside there. But this is just an example of some of the little hidden secrets in the Capitol. And so one of the things when we bring tour groups in, if it's a small enough group, if it's a big group, we can't do it. But if it's a small group, we'll actually take them down this hall. Believe it or not, my big self have actually gotten down, and more importantly, out of this hall. I'm not going to debut that again for today, but suffice to say, I've been able to live and tell about it and get out of there. But it goes all the way down. It's an old staircase, and I'm told, I can't verify this, I'm told that this staircase, which opens to, if you go down, formally open to the outside, was one of the staircases that British soldiers used when they breached the Capitol during the War of I think it was 1814 when they actually attacked Washington. When they came in, it was one of the stairs that British soldiers actually came up. So a lot of just amazing history in this building. And so when folks come from North Carolina, we try to show things that if it's a small enough group, things are timed right, you can actually let folks go down there. The kids seem to love it. A lot of older folks, not so much. But it's just one of the neat things about the Capitol, as well as the other day-to-day things that folks see all the time.
Sure. Yeah. It's one of the neat things about the Capitol. It's also one of the creepy things about the Capitol and many other buildings like it. There's a lot of tunnels that most people didn't know existed, turns out. In 2020, when people were talking about things that happen in tunnels, I was like, that sounds ridiculous. You don't know that. And then, you know, a couple of years later, you're like, oh, wait, there's a lot of tunnel stuff going on. And it's very weird. We had the tunnel Jews in New York. I mean, that's what they're called. It's not, I don't think that's anti-Semitic to say tunnel Jews when there were Jews living in a tunnel and like doing weird shit down there. And the name just became tunnel Jews. So it is what it is, right? Then we have Elon Musk digging tunnels under Las Vegas or something. Although there are also tunnels already under Las Vegas, and actually homeless people live there. I saw some weird video on that the other day. But maybe the Boring Company, now it moves, now it digs tunnels at the pace of a snail, which Elon says is actually quite impressive, and perhaps it is. Are we going to find out that there are all of these tunnels and we'll just be told that Elon built them all? That is kind of what I see coming, but we shall see. In terms of what these tunnels are used for, God only knows. I mean, the creepy stuff that has happened in that Capitol building, I cannot even begin to fathom. Karamaga in the chat, $20. APL, I like your version better. Well, I do too. Panoonah will live forever. And if Greg Gutfeld is on board with Panoonah Banka, then he should just say so. Oh, I know the networks can't do that. They're serious. Imagine, oh gosh, man, being a network or cable news person has got to be so degrading. You are literally paid to lie to everyone and communicate the most ridiculous stories in the world, showing the dumbest fake videos as though they are real, like the Afghanistan withdrawal. Taking it all very seriously and claiming that you have to be so serious because you are objective journalists. Unbelievable. Let us continue. Don't know what to make of those tunnels, by the way. Maybe we'll find out someday. But yeah, I don't know. Just information among other information, revelations as they come. This is Mediaite from yesterday. France's Macron scrambles to snuff out viral cocaine claim. And I'm sure that by now, most of you will have seen this. But if you haven't, this is Emmanuel Macron with Keir Starmer and I think his name's Friedrich. Yeah, Friedrich Merz of Germany on a plane the other day, or a train, I think, perhaps, on their way back from meeting with the comedic actor in Kyiv. Here we are.
It's a long walk. I'll be back in Poland.
Now, the key here, if you have not seen this video yet, and if you're on audio, I guess you're screwed. But at the head of the table where Macron's about to sit down, between the water glass and the file folders is a white pouch, or so it looks, a bag of some kind. And to the right of the glass in front of Friedrich Merz will be a long, thin, like, not long, 3 inches long, thin piece of what looks like metal and what then would look like one of those cocaine scoops or key. You know, it's very similar to a key. They call it like a cocaine spoon. And I was in Hollywood, so I know about these things. Not that I did it. I actually never did, somehow, in all those years. But here we go.
Through my bathroom, huh?
Yeah. It's literally.
Yeah.
We came through Germany.
Yeah.
And then we made it to
German
France.
bedroom and
Yeah, we got through the border.
Right.
Yeah. So it would be a lot of a drink.
Yeah.
So right here, the bag is still there. The cocaine spoon is still there, assuming that's what these things are, right? And then Merz will notice his and pocket it, and Macron will see the white thing and immediately scramble to put it under his arm.
So it would be a lot of a drink.
Yeah.
And that is quite a look as though he just got caught. Uh-oh. And there he goes to the pocket to put it away. Oh, they didn't notice. They didn't notice at all. Yeah, sure, Emmanuel, sure. They didn't notice. The response came from Elysee on X, formerly Twitter. When European unity becomes inconvenient, disinformation goes so far as to make a simple tissue look like drugs. This fake news is being spread by France's enemies, both abroad and at home. We must remain vigilant against manipulation. So, yes, censor us by all means. Now, if that picture can be believed, then I would suggest that it actually does kind of look like a tissue, if that picture can be believed. But then again, all of these people are degenerate global regime elites who have been compromised and corrupted in order to attain the levels of power that they now hold. So do a lot of them do cocaine? Probably. There was cocaine in the White House when the fake president Joe Biden was there with his son Hunter. And hey, there were also rumors that it could have been Kamala. And could it have been Kamala? Well, she used to be like a rap guy's girlfriend. So yeah, it could be. I mean, was she a prostitute? Who knows? I don't put anything past these people. And people have theorized for years that Volodymyr Zelensky is quite a cokehead himself. So, hey, maybe they got the good stuff on the way to Kyiv, or maybe it's tissue. I cannot judge these things for you. Dave in the chat says, I wonder if Macron has an extremely long pinky nail. We really should check that out. If only someone can get a picture of that. Somebody photographed Emmanuel Macron's pinky. Here was another one of the big and kind of amusing stories over the weekend. And I think that this one actually has some degree of importance, and we'll get into that in just a second. But Trump administration poised to accept Palace in the Sky as a gift for Trump from Qatar, also known as Qatar, in the same way that Kiev is now known as Kyiv. This is from ABC News on Sunday. And this video that they have now updated is really stealing my thunder for later in the show when we're going to talk about Saudi Arabia. But whatever, these things happen. In what may be the most valuable gift ever extended to the United States from a foreign government, the Trump administration is preparing to accept a super luxury Boeing 747-8 jumbo jet from the royal family of Qatar, a gift that is to be available for use by President Donald Trump as the new Air Force One until shortly before he leaves office, at which time ownership of the plane will be transferred to the Trump Presidential Library Foundation. Sources familiar with the proposed arrangement told ABC News. The gift had been expected to be announced next week when Trump visits Qatar on the first foreign trip of his second term, according to sources familiar, but a senior White House official said that the gift will not be presented or gifted while the president is in Qatar this week. And that part in particular, I think, is interesting. But before we discuss that, this is what Donald Trump had to say about the plane on Truth Social. So the fact that the Defense Department is getting a gift free of charge of a 747 aircraft to replace the 40-year-old Air Force One temporarily in a very public and transparent transaction so bothers the crooked Democrats that they insist we pay top dollar for the plane. Anybody can do that. The Dems are world-class losers, MAGA. And yeah, that's true. Anyone can buy a plane. Only Trump can get a $400 million plane gifted to the United States rather than having to spend American government money on a plane. Now, if you have a problem with that, be my guest. Okay. If you want to say that Trump is getting this $400 million gift, it's going to go to the Defense Department. It's going to replace Air Force One for a time, but then Trump is going to have that plane himself. And therefore, the government of Qatar might be exercising undue influence on the president of the United States. Well, by all means, knock yourself out. Stick to that principle. All good. Okay. I'm not saying that the principle's even wrong. Maybe you're right. I'm totally fine with that. That said, the fact that he's not receiving it yet and that it's not being gifted yet makes me wonder if it's ever going to actually happen. Because aside from anything about this plane, the story puts a big spotlight on the issue of emoluments. Is Trump going to be hurt by this issue? Of course not. But at the same time, all the people who are Trump deranged, who don't actually understand anything that's happening right now, have not woken up at all in the last 5 years in the midst of the greatest concurrent crises this country has ever faced. Those people are going to go all in saying that Donald Trump has violated the emoluments clause. You've got none other than Norm Eisen out there pushing that case. And so we will get a conversation about emoluments, and we'll get back to those constitutional issues like emoluments so that we understand the founders' initial intent and can know better what the big picture is, the way they wanted to set the country out, so that we can guide our actions and our thoughts that way in the future. Let us continue. This is Chuck Schumer having a bit of a meltdown. Can I find him? Schumer, there we are. Over the plane.
Of the Qatari government gifting Donald Trump a $400 million private jet to use as Air Force One is so corrupt that even Putin would give a double take. This is not just naked corruption. It is also a grave national security threat. So in light of the deeply troubling news of a possible Qatari-funded Air Force One and the reports that the Attorney General personally signed off on this clearly unethical deal, I am announcing a hold on all DOJ political nominees until we get more answers. He is jeopardizing America's national security to line his own pockets. What is most chilling about this brazen bribe and the national security betrayal is how openly Donald Trump is doing it, how he is lying about the need for this aircraft and the risks involved, and how he is daring Republicans to call him out. And how are Republicans responding? With silence, with their heads in the sand, total obeisance, afraid to tell the emperor he has no clothes.
I love when they get poetic in their speeches. They're like, oh, this one's really going to hammer it home for all the retards watching on television. Come on, Chuck. It's funny watching him talk about how blatantly unethical this is, and it's a threat to our national security. And by the way, do Qataris want to give Trump a bad plane that's going to crash into the sea? Hey, maybe they do. Again, I don't know that the thing will ever be delivered or that Trump will ever fly on it. None of us know that at this point. And what we do know is that we're being told this story, and now we get to hear about emoluments, talk about what this means, because it turns out there are other people who might be affected by this emoluments clause when the flip comes. Okay. And so I asked for some examples. I asked ChatGPT this morning for some examples, some Democrats that had received substantial gifts or other emoluments from foreign countries over the years. And I said, besides Joe Biden. And so it immediately listed Hunter Biden, because that's the sort of thing that AIs do. Then, of course, John Kerry and Nancy Pelosi, in addition to Mitt Romney, were involved in that Hunter Biden and Joe Biden corruption. Then, of course, you've got Hillary Clinton accepting millions from foreign governments, including Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Algeria, and UAE. Some who had business before the State Department, it notes. Those are the countries where we're being told Donald Trump is selling out America's interests this week. Barack Obama indirectly, of course, Swalwell sleeping with a Chinese spy. Dianne Feinstein had a Chinese driver for 20 years who was a spy. I asked about neocons, Paul Wolfowitz, Dick Cheney as vice president. Halliburton was awarded no bid contracts worth billions during the Iraq war. Though not gifts from foreign nations, the company's contracts in Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia were deeply tied to U.S. military involvement and foreign state actors. Okay. John Bolton, Bill Kristol, how could you? The man who set up the project for the New American Century, one of the biggest neocons in the world. His father, Irving Kristol, responsible for starting neoconservatism, which, as we've discussed many times, was an outgrowth of Bolshevism. These are just communists who are hell-bent on military revolution worldwide at all times to take over the entire world and run it under a one world liberal international rules-based order. That's what neoconservatism is. Richard Pearl, Elliot Abrams, Michael Chertoff. And then I said, well, what about kind of some lower level people who are involved in emoluments that aren't the people you've listed so far? It gave me Robert Menendez, Ilhan Omar, Judy Chu, Gregory Meeks. That was the guy who just last week was confused that Scott Bessent might have the audacity to say that Joe Biden may have never been president. And let's just, for old time's sake, right?
Who was the president in 2024?
One believes President Biden.
One believes? You one of those non-believers that the election, the American people didn't vote?
I mean, that's not a coherent thought. I don't think he believes the American people didn't vote. Rashida Tlaib from Michigan, and it notes John Podesta for his UAE, Saudi, and China lobbying connections. So the idea that Trump's being paid off by these foreign nations is preposterous when you look at the world through the good twin, evil twin paradigm and understand what the sides actually are. All of the people just listed are globalists. They are members of the Uniparty, fully invested. Their life's work is bringing to fruition the agenda of that global regime, and in the process, profiting themselves greatly. That's what they do as a profession. They are members of a foreign occupation government. So the idea that Trump is the bad guy because someone wants to give the U.S. government a plane is preposterous, but it's good that we're having the conversation. Let us go to the Associated Press, one of the official mouthpieces of that global regime. What is the Emoluments Clause and how might it apply to Qatar giving Trump a plane? And we'll skip the intro there. What is an emolument? Simply, an emolument is compensation for services from employment or holding office that can take the form of a salary, fee, or profit. What is the Emoluments Clause? There are separate emoluments delineations in the U.S. Constitution. Both are aimed at preserving the independence of the president from influence from outside entities, including Congress, states, and foreign governments. Article 1 bars anyone holding government office from accepting any present emolument, office, or title from any king, prince, or foreign state without congressional consent. Article 2 deals with domestic emoluments, noting that Congress can't increase or decrease the president's compensation during his term in office and prohibits the president from receiving any emolument from the states. So the states can't give the president gifts to get him to do their bidding. All right. Now, just as a sidebar, we talked about this a little bit on Saturday night on Devolution Power Hour, but the original 13th Amendment, which there's some reason to believe that it was actually ratified and then just struck from the books and then replaced with the Reconstruction Amendments. The original 13th Amendment was to bar anyone with titles of nobility from serving in the first place. And that counted with things like Esquire. And so Esquire is still a title that is used today. It's for attorneys. And it's pretty clear, thinking about what the motivation would have been, that they didn't want British nobles serving in the American government, and they didn't want people with other loyalties serving in the American government. And so you then think about the credentialing boards that give out professional titles, which are akin to titles of nobility in this day and age. And we're talking about lawyers and doctors, for instance. And of course, now with the number of regulations on virtually any business, most people just to open their own small business have to go through some sort of state regulation and state credentialing body in order to get a business license. Like the idea that people need to go get registered with the state to cut other people's hair for money is unbelievable. That's not the sort of thing that should exist in the world. And hopefully one day it will not. And, you know, there's plenty of places where it just does not now. And good for all those people just starting a business, trading their time for money, and other people enjoying the skills and services that they can provide. We would have quite a different world right now if there were no doctors or lawyers in the Congress. If there were no lawyers in the Congress, if there were no people with dual loyalties in the Congress, dual citizenship, loyalties to the foreign occupying government, if there were no compromised or corrupted people in Congress, there would be no one there, which again is one of the things to keep in the back pocket when we're thinking about the legitimacy of Congress and the fact that none of them can actually prove that they were elected. To top it off, they're all products of the uniparty and or servants of the uniparty, if not products. And it's very difficult for me to see how they are not obviously, blatantly, openly committing treason by pretending to serve in a government and make rules for other people. Let's get back to this Associated Press article. So they mentioned that the Emoluments Clause is coming up now because of the plane deal. Has Trump dealt with debate over emoluments before? In his first term, Trump faced lawsuits from Maryland and the District of Columbia, as well as high-end restaurants and hotels in New York and Washington, D.C., that accused him of illegally profiting off of the presidency through his luxury Washington hotel. In 2021, the U.S. Supreme Court brought an end to the cases, ruling them as moot since Trump was, quote unquote, no longer president. The justices threw out Trump's challenge to lower court rulings that had allowed lawsuits to go forward, alleging that he violated the Constitution's Emoluments Clause by accepting payments from foreign and domestic officials who stayed at the Trump International Hotel and patronized other businesses owned by the former president and his family. So them spending money to rent rooms at his hotel or eat dinner in his restaurants, that was considered, they were trying to make the case that those were emoluments. Has Congress weighed in on emoluments? They've tried. Last year, Congressional Democrats introduced legislation that would prohibit U.S. officials from accepting money, payments, or gifts from foreign governments without congressional consent. It was their response to a years-long probe into Trump's overseas business dealings. The proposals, led by Friar Cuck Jamie Raskin and Commie Senator Richard Blumenthal, Raskin, of course, is also a communist. His dad was a communist, would enforce the Constitution's ban on emoluments, which prohibits the president from accepting foreign gifts and money without Congress's permission. Democrats have argued that Trump ignored the clause as president. Both bills did not advance. The funny thing, though, is if Trump went to the Congress, you would expect that the Congress would just give him approval. And because he's not going to do that, and we're not going to go through those steps, I wouldn't think, then we're not going to get resolution on this that way. Although we might in another way. The conversation is going to come up. If he takes the plane, you can imagine that they will make the same case that they made in the first term about much smaller, less gifty instances of foreigners spending money with the Trump organization. We shall see. Nonetheless, last week, I think, was habeas corpus week. And now we are in the middle of emoluments week. John Drake in the chat, $5. First, APL. Okay, well,
Una Panoonah, Banka.
Hard to disagree with that. Easier to disagree with this.
And Luna. All right.
And he goes on. Second, Qatar in Arabic is pronounced Qatar with emphasis on the T. All right, then I will eat crow on that one. It was conversation, or I was conversational in Arabic 20 years ago for what it's worth. Wow, that's very cool. I did not know that. Thank you for that one. So maybe saying it Qatar is like the Kiev. Or maybe people are just saying it wrong. All right, it's Qatar now. It's Qatar. It's always been Qatar. It will forever be Qatar. I am experiencing great shame for having called it Qatar with such confidence. Okay, let us move forward. Donald Trump on Sunday, a cryptic but attention-grabbing post on Truth Social. My next truth will be one of the most important and impactful I've ever issued. Enjoy. And enjoy we did. Here is that post. Hold for processing. There we go. For many years, the world has wondered why prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals in the United States of America, so states twice, maybe a typo, maybe something else, were so much higher in price than they were in any other nation, sometimes being 5 to 10 times more expensive than the same drug manufactured in the same laboratory or plant by the same company? Question mark, question mark, question mark. It was always difficult to explain and very embarrassing because, in fact, there was no correct or rightful answer. The pharmaceutical and drug companies would say for years, and he said slash, not and technically, pharmaceutical / drug companies would say for years that it was research and development costs, and that all of these costs were and would be for no reason whatsoever borne by the quote unquote suckers of America alone. Campaign contributions can do wonders, but not with me and not with the Republican Party. We are going to do the right thing, something that the Democrats have fought for many years. Therefore, I am pleased to announce that tomorrow morning in the White House at 9 a.m., I will be signing one of the most consequential executive orders in our country's history. Prescription drug and pharmaceutical prices will be reduced almost immediately by 30 to 80%. They will rise throughout the world in order to equalize and, for the first time in many years, bring fairness to America. I will be instituting a most favored nations policy whereby the United States will pay the same price as the nation that pays the lowest price anywhere in the world. Our country will finally be treated fairly, and our citizens' healthcare costs will be reduced by numbers never even thought of before. Additionally, on top of everything else, the United States will save trillions of dollars. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Make America great again. And so Trump has talked many times about the middlemen. He's talked many times about this issue. They tried to get it done in the first term. It seemed like it was going to be done. Then there was pushback. And as with so many of the issues from the first term, they were put in place. Then they were, quote unquote, stopped, and everything was delayed for 4 years. And now they're all coming into place again. And we'll see some other examples of that today. The drug company thing is particularly interesting in how the system was working. We were essentially subsidizing other nations. We were making their prescription drugs really cheap while ours were really, really expensive. The drugs would be developed here, manufactured here, and sold to the rest of the world, but paid for by the American people in direct payments, in parts of their insurance payments. The insurance companies are one of the middlemen that Trump has talked about quite a bit over the years. It is important to keep all of that in mind. And let's go. Let me say one more thing, and then we'll get to the next thing. I've talked many times about what I perceive to be the situation as it existed in Afghanistan relative to the opium trade there. Okay. The pharma companies are purchasers of opium that is supplied from around the world. I think Australia is a big country for it now, and I think Turkey is the other one, although I could be wrong. Don't quote me. Afghanistan was always known as the world's largest producer of opium, but we were told that that opium was sold onto the black market and was not the opium that the pharma companies were using. That was the black market opium coming from Afghanistan, while our military was in country for 2 decades, essentially guarding that operation. Because when America left, when the military left, and control of Afghanistan was turned back over to the Taliban, they immediately ceased the opium trade in Afghanistan. Where was all that opium going? Was it going to the black market? Was the American military fully stationed in a country to guard this valuable resource while the American people were caused to become addicted to opiates? And now, of course, fentanyl, they say, is synthetic. But prior to that, opium was an input into the production line for the pharma companies. And so if the pharma companies are importing those kinds of inputs, whether it's from the black market trade, as I believe it to be, or from what they claim are their legitimate sources, that's drugs coming in as an input product into these pharmaceuticals. Maybe it's to China, maybe it's to Mexico, maybe it's to here, whatever. It is not then hard to scrape off some amount of those drugs and push them, flood the streets of our urban centers with those drugs, bringing them in the same way. And of course, now pharmaceuticals are sold as street drugs as well. So you get it on all levels. And we know that the government was involved in flooding urban centers with drugs over the years. Is that part of the pharma element? Are the drug companies then interlinked with the cartels that have been labeled as terrorist organizations? And we spent some significant time on that. I think all of that is possible. And I think that this sort of thing is a major, major threat to the global regime's top-down control system. And then got to mention that the pharma companies also fund a lot of the mainstream television media that we are all subjected to. Even whether it's the cable news just preaching propaganda and nonsense all day, or the commercials during NFL games that lead us to believe that our country is something entirely different than we experience it to be. They are undergoing reality construction in all of these different ways, and a lot of that is sponsored by pharma. And you can go back through the Prussiagate series and see the influence of IG Farben, which was a drug company that I think came to, let me just ask the machine here. Did IG Farben change names and come to America? Let's see what the machine says. Maybe we need Jeopardy music for the machine. There needs to be something. Yes, they did. They became, hold on, forming the post-Boer breakup. So they became BASF, Bayer, and Hoaxed. And so, of course, we still have Bayer. So the pharmaceutical thing, the medical experimentation, all of that goes back to Nazi Germany. And did those pharma companies change hands, change ownerships, change agendas, change motivations, change profit models, change anything? There's no reason to believe that they did. And now let's take a look at this. This is a flashback that I think probably many of us thought of immediately upon seeing the Trump drug pricing announcement.
Doing that from the first day I came into office. To this end, a short time ago, I signed a new executive order to ensure that when it comes to essential medicines, we buy American.
And by the way, this is from 2020 in his speech at the Whirlpool factory. Classic Trump speech, and particularly for this section.
The executive order will require that U.S. government agencies purchase all essential medicines that we need from American sources. The executive order will also sweep away unnecessary regulatory barriers to domestic pharmaceutical production and support advanced manufacturing processes that will keep our drug prices low and allow American companies to compete on the world stage. We'll be able to compete on the world stage, but we're now going to have the lowest prices as opposed to by far the highest prices. I have people that I know that go to Canada. They go to Canada to buy drugs, to buy prescription drugs. They go there because the price is so much lower than the United States. And yet it's made by the same company, often in the same plant. It's a disgrace. And the politicians allowed this to happen for many, many decades. You have people called middlemen. I don't know who the middlemen are. I don't know. They never say middle women, so they're politically not correct. But I've heard the term middlemen for a long time. They are so wealthy. They are so wealthy. Nobody has any idea who the hell they are, what they do. They make more money than the drug companies. You know, in all fairness, at least the drug companies have to produce a product. And it has to be a good product. But the middlemen, well, the rebate that I'm doing cuts out the middlemen and it reduces costs, and the money goes back to the people purchasing the drugs. So I have a lot of enemies out there. This may be the last time you'll see me for a while. A lot of very, very rich enemies, but they are not happy with what I'm doing. But I figure we have one chance to do it, and no other president's going to do what I do. No other president would do a favored nations, a rebate, a buy from other nations at much less cost. Nobody. And there are a lot of unhappy people, and they're very rich people, and they're very unhappy. Here's my fourth promise to...
Very rich, very powerful. No one knows who they are. Very dangerous, apparently. You might not see me for a while. What did that mean? What did that mean when Donald Trump said that on August 6th of 2020? And I think a lot of people, having seen the 4 years where we did not see him for a while, I mean, we saw him a lot during that period, obviously, but not as president. And he did kind of go dark from January. I think it was like around the end of January 20th, 2021, when he kind of stepped off stage briefly, till I think it was some point in May of 2021 when he kind of came back giving the keynote speech at CPAC. And there was much consternation about that event, if you recall, because, of course, Donald Trump had staged a very violent insurrection against the United States of America. Let us go to the White House fact sheet on the drug pricing bill. Fact sheet: Donald J. Trump announces actions to put American patients first by lowering drug prices and stopping foreign free riding on American pharmaceutical innovation. The order directs the U.S. Trade Representative and Secretary of Commerce to take action to ensure foreign countries are not engaged in practices that purposefully and unfairly undercut market prices and drive price hikes in the United States. The order instructs the administration to communicate price targets to pharmaceutical manufacturers to establish that America, the largest purchaser and funder of prescription drugs in the world, gets the best deal. And, you know, of course, one of the arguments against all this from the fake conservatives out there who are trying to convince everyone that Donald Trump is somehow not a conservative is they're like, oh, well, now price controls are okay. It's not that price controls are okay. It's that we are being forced to pay a premium, and we're being forced by ourselves. Okay. It's not like someone else out there is affecting the market and thus the market dictates that the price is X to us. That's not how it is. It's that our policies subsidize other countries, making our prices higher so theirs can be lower. That is obviously against the interests of the American people. So the idea that this is somehow a price control, rather that unduly influences markets, rather than a resetting of an obviously imbalanced situation, is of course ridiculous. But then again, those pretend free market conservatives and the libertarian types and the rest of them over the last 10 years have shown themselves to be the most unprincipled and clueless people who genuinely care more about whatever they think their personal branding is than the good of the United States of America. And I think few things could be more obvious than that. Let's get back to this fact sheet here, though. The Secretary of Health and Human Services will establish a mechanism through which American patients can buy their drugs directly from manufacturers who sell to Americans at a most favored nation price, bypassing middlemen. If drug manufacturers fail to offer most favored nation pricing, the order directs the Secretary of Health and Human Services to 1, propose rules that impose most favored nation pricing, and 2, take other aggressive measures to significantly reduce the cost of prescription drugs to the American consumer and end anti-competitive practices. Okay, so this is in case there is too much pushback from the drug companies, they are ordered to take additional steps. And we may well see that happening. You got to think, though, about, again, the imbalance of the situation as it exists now. And then, actually, sorry, hold on. Wow, sneeze just crept up on me out of nowhere. So the imbalanced situation as it already exists, and what was the other half of that I was going to, the amount of corruption that is already deeply embedded in the system to create the imbalances within the system. Those are the sorts of things, if the corruption is known, and I imagine that they do know all about the corruption, that they've got records of all of the behind the scenes wheelings and dealings. When they say we have it all, I think that's what they mean. They have all the evidence about all this stuff. They have the information, etc. So knowing that, and knowing that it was a series of corrupt deals and practices, payoffs to government officials to put certain laws and rules and regulations in place, if there is substantial pushback, then there are these other additional steps that can be taken. You know, Trump has, I think, given people probably much fairer chances than they deserve to do the right thing rather than having a fight about everything. And we have seen over and over and over again that when people don't do the right thing, the fight is inevitable and will be won by our side. And I think all of that is great. Getting a better deal for Americans. This is why the administration is taking action. According to recent data, the prices Americans pay for brand name drugs are more than 3 times the price of other OECD nations, even after accounting for discounts manufacturers provide in the U.S. The U.S. has less than 5% of the world's population, yet funds roughly 75% of global pharmaceutical profits. That's madness. Part of that is just that Americans are more drugged up than other countries are, and that also is madness. But that right there, 75% of pharma profits worldwide, yet we only have 5% of the world's population. Drug manufacturers discount their products to gain access to foreign markets and then subsidize those discounts through high-priced charges in America. In essence, Americans are subsidizing drug manufacturer profits and foreign health systems. Despite drug manufacturers benefiting from generous research subsidies and enormous healthcare spending by the American government. In his first term, President Trump took historic action to keep Medicare and seniors from paying more for drugs than economically comparable countries, which the Biden administration rescinded before it could take effect. So again, we have one of those things that was in place, and then during the fake presidency, they took it out. Now it's going back in. Instead of fixing this problem, the Biden administration's greatest achievement was to negotiate prices that were, on average, 78% higher than in 11 comparable countries as part of Biden's effort to beat Medicare. So obviously they did not get the job done, and we're not going to get the job done. That is just one of the sorts of things that you have to understand about the dynamic if we are right about what we've been tracking for these last 5 years now. And I think that there's good reason to believe that we are right. And I think we'll see some of that reason throughout the rest of this show. Let us continue. This order builds on actions from President Trump's first term to make progress on reducing price disparities at home and expands those efforts by including Medicaid in addition to Medicare. Trump recently signed an executive order to take additional action to lower drug prices, including by providing massive discounts to low-income patients for life-saving medicines, facilitating importation programs, and increasing the availability of generic and biosimilar medicines. President Trump is also working to make drug prices radically transparent, as he recently signed an executive order to build on his historic price transparency efforts undertaken during his first term. Now, will the drastic reductions in drug prices and the costs that have to then be reimbursed by health insurance, will that bring down the price of health insurance? Maybe. Trump's done other things in that direction as well, including price transparency, which I think is one of the most important things. And I've discussed it on the show, so I don't have to go into it again. But if everybody knew how much the insurance companies were being charged for their services, rather than all of that being hidden behind one insurance bill, if you saw itemized and you saw $20 for a Band-Aid and $36 for 3 Q-tips, people might say, wait a second, how is everyone getting ripped off to that degree? And is that price being shifted onto me, the consumer? And the answer, of course, is yes. President Trump has been relentless in his effort to address the unfair and outrageous prices Americans pay for prescription drugs and health insurance, and hopefully this will change that. In case after case, our citizens pay massively higher prices than other nations pay for the same exact pill from the same factory, effectively subsidizing socialism abroad with skyrocketing prices at home. So we would spend tremendous amounts of money in order to provide inexpensive drugs to another country. And when I say the price is different, you can see some examples where the price is beyond anything, 4 times, 5 times different. All right. Let us keep on moving. This was Health and Human Services Secretary. Actually, before we get to that, let's get to this. Actually, we'll stick with this. This is Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on Fox News yesterday.
Mr. Secretary, Trump says some prices will come down almost immediately. What is the timetable for these price cuts?
Well, there's a series of escalating steps, but you know what? That will bring them down to European levels. Right now, America provides 75% of the pharmaceutical revenues in the world, and we only have 4.2% of the world's population.
Sure.
We're paying in our country, the list price for Ozempic is $1,300 per dose. In London, it's $88. And Democratic and Republican politicians have been talking about for years, we got to end these discrepancies. Nobody has had the courage to do it because of the power of the pharmaceutical lobby on Capitol Hill.
Okay.
In answer to your question, how soon will this happen? It depends on how enthusiastically the drug companies cooperate. There are a series of escalating steps that we will take if they don't cooperate. But we're we've been meeting with the pharmaceutical companies. They admit that this is something that should have ended a long time ago. And I think they're ready to figure out a way to get there. And they have advantages in this executive order, Stuart, because we got rid of the PBMs. We got rid of the middlemen. And that's something that they've wanted themselves.
The middlemen. Let us go to New York Magazine to just hear some of the reeing, right? You can't just give the good side. We got to see what the regime and its propagandists are telling the American public, or at least telling, unfortunately, it's so sad, brain dead communists standard issue villagers of the Uniparty left. 5 big questions about Trump's new plan to lower drug prices. We're going to skip down to the end here. Senator Bernie Sanders, who has been fighting to lower drug prices in the U.S. for most of his career, was not impressed and predicted that Trump's executive order would die in court. So it's not that Trump's not doing the right thing. It's just not going to work. Bernie has the only way to get it done. He said, if Trump is serious about making real change rather than just issuing a press release, he will support legislation I will soon be introducing to make sure we pay no more for prescription drugs than people in other major countries. Let's be clear. The problem is not that the price of prescription drugs is too low in Europe and Canada. The problem is that the extraordinarily greedy pharmaceutical industry made over $100 billion in profits last year by ripping off the American people. Further, as Trump knows well, his executive order will be thrown out by the courts. I give myself a 7 out of 10 on that Bernie Sanders impression. It used to be better, but I haven't done it in a long time, to be fair. And at points there, it may have sounded a little bit like my Anthony Fauci impression because they're basically the same guy. Let us continue. The Wall Street Journal's editorial board rejected the idea of most favored nation drug prices in an op-ed last week that ran with the headline, Trump's worst idea since tariffs. Trump officials are pitching Republicans on a most favored nation drug pricing regime for Medicaid. While the details are hazy, the idea is for Medicaid to pay drug makers the lowest price charged by other developed countries. Well, it would be by the 2 other developed countries. Mr. Trump proposed a similar scheme for Medicare Part B drugs at the end of his first term, and it was a bad idea then, too. So the Wall Street Journal, Rupert Murdoch's outlet, takes the side of the pharma companies and of the regime. Is that a conservative newspaper? No, it is a globalist newspaper. If you understand the world through good twin, evil twin, rather than understanding it through ridiculous false dichotomies like Democrat and Republican, conservative and liberal, then it immediately becomes clear whose side these people are on. And Bernie Sanders is just such a ridiculous fool. I don't need to go into it. I talked about it a little bit last night, but this man is so corrupt and so dishonest and clearly got paid off to back off of the Clintons in 2016 and then again in 2020. What an embarrassment Bernie Sanders is. And the people who support that man still should be ashamed of themselves. Though drug makers are still waiting to see whether Trump pursues actual policy changes, the pharmaceutical industry seems poised to oppose any substantive efforts. The AP reports that Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, a top lobbying group for the industry, issued a statement denouncing the most favored nation policy as potentially harmful. Importing foreign prices will cut billions of dollars from Medicare with no guarantee that it helps patients or improves their access to medicines. It jeopardizes the hundreds of billions our member companies are planning to invest in America, making us more reliant on China for innovative medicines. That is really a stretch. And of course, they note that Trump was unable to implement this in the first term. The plan was immediately dogged by opposition from pharmaceutical companies, with Ken Frazier, the then CEO of Merck, saying at the time that legal challenges would likely emerge if the federal government were to adopt the rule. In 2020, a federal judge rejected a rushed late-stage attempt to push the favored nations regulation through before the end of Trump's first term, claiming the administration did not allow enough time for public comment as required by law. And so we will see what the pushback is this time around and whether it will have the desired effect. But again, it's important to question who exactly would stand to benefit on either side of this deal. Now, if Trump and his administration were completely and totally incompetent, and they couldn't figure out how to actually solve this problem in an effective way, then fine, their solutions would be bad. But that's not really the claim. The claim is that they're not allowed to do this. There's some potential harm that's going to come that is unrelated to whether or not it'll bring the price of drugs down. Bringing the price of drugs down brings the price of drugs down. That's just one of those easy things to understand. Oh, you're making it cost way less, equal to these other countries that are paying way less, and they'll have to pay more, and it'll even out rather than us subsidizing them. That will bring our drug prices down. So our drug prices come down, therefore our drug prices come down. Yeah, you can pretty much take that one to the bank. So it's not that it won't work. It's not that it's not pro-American. It's just whatever excuses they can come up with. And if that doesn't work, then you get the law involved and hopefully tie it up in court long enough to outlast Donald Trump so that he can't implement his programs. And then we just move on. And you got to wonder, why isn't our fake and illegitimate Congress taking up these issues and passing legislation that is so obviously good for the American people? Why are they never able to get that done? Why has Bernie Sanders been talking about all the same bullshit for his 60 years in public office and never actually accomplished anything? It's a mystery. This is ancillary. I'm going to show a video in a second from the Trump announcement yesterday of this drug pricing program, but this is a bit of a diversion. This is from yesterday in the New York Times on Pam Bondi. I thought this was just very interesting. As White House steers Justice Department, Bondi embraces role of TV messenger. How about that? For all the people who get offended when I call people TV characters, who are the same trust the planners who want you to know that you have to support every one of Trump's endorsements, except like if Michael Flynn Jr. doesn't support the endorsement, and then it's okay to question it because they also grovel before the Flynns, which means anything that the Flynns say is fair game. So you don't trust Trump as long as someone else, it's not that you don't trust Trump, as long as someone else that you grovel before is going against Trump, then it's okay. Then they have permission because they're incapable of thinking for themselves. That is ultimately the problem that is presented over and over and over and over again. Skipping down in the article, because there's just a bit of this that I want to highlight. So we have Bondi, the TV character, going out to address the press and the American people, letting them know what the Department of Justice is actually doing. Does Pam Bondi know what the Department of Justice is actually doing? Sometimes it doesn't seem like she does. Or she is. Which way did I say that? Even before Miss Bondi was selected, Mr. Trump had enlisted two of his personal lawyers, Todd Blanche and Mr. Bove, this being Emil Bove, as the top two subordinates to the Attorney General. Mr. Blanche, who led a stall and brawl legal defense in the two federal prosecutions of Mr. Trump, has had a strong relationship with him and had been initially considered for the top job, that of Attorney General. Ms. Bondi was deeply displeased by the arrangement and told friends it undermined control over her own organization. It made no difference. She has tried to adapt and has become close to Mr. Bove, a stoic enforcer who she refers to as Sweet Emil, according to several officials. And so I thought that was very interesting. We have Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, who was selected to replace Matt Gaetz after that saga concluded. And at the same time, we have Todd Blanche, who's now being given another role as well, or maybe separate from this, and Emil Bove already operating and in place before Bondi got there. And she was displeased with that arrangement because she didn't have full control over her own organization. So two people very close to Trump were given positions of substantial authority relative to who the principal in that position would be, the Attorney General, in this case, Pam Bondi. And is that a template that exists in other parts of the government? I would suggest that it probably is, to the extent that the TV characters are doing the jobs they are tasked with doing. Other people in those organizations that they are the so-called heads of are probably doing the actual jobs while they are communicating to the television cameras to let the American people know what the intent of the Trump administration actually is. Or perhaps they're being exposed in the same way that we talked about earlier. I hope that they're all good people doing the most heroic, pro-American, pro-Trump work you could ever possibly imagine. But I don't just grant them that by virtue of Donald Trump having selected them. And let's add this on to that.
The CMS administrator, a friend of mine, Dr. Mehmet Oz, who is an amazing guy. You know, I was telling Bobby before, Oz had a very successful show, but it hurt his reputation. Because when you're in show business, it hurts your reputation a little bit. It's good for you. It's good for you, but in terms of professionalism and being a doctor, it sort of hurts your reputation. This guy went to the best schools, was the best, I mean, top of the line. Then he did a television show, became a success, made a lot of money, all that stuff, but it sort of hurt him. And you know who I compare that to? I hate to say this, but a special woman, Jeanine Pirro. She was the toughest, smartest DA, maybe in our countries, in our cities and states, history, New York. She was really tough, really sharp. Then she did a show, and people didn't think of her quite the same way. She became more of an entertainment person, like Oz. Oz is not an entertainer. He's not really an entertainer, if you know the real story. And she isn't either. She is unbelievable. She was one of the strongest district attorneys in the history of New York, highly respected, very tough, went after the drug dealers at a level that you don't see today anymore. And hopefully she's given up a tremendous, she's leaving the #1 show on cable television, one of the #1 shows on television, period, The Five, but they've got great people left behind, but she was a big part of it. And so I equate it to that. Jeanine Pirro is unbelievable.
So that was, again, quite interesting. Donald Trump talking about the television characters in his administration and making it quite clear that he believes the television actually makes them look like less serious people than they are. And that, of course, is some kind of compliment to these people, specifically Oz and Jeanine Pirro. But you could apply it broadly to people like Brooke Rollins and Pete Hegseth and Sean Duffy, etc. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not. What's important is being able to fully understand the dynamics that are involved in so many of these stories that impact how we should make our judgments about what's actually going on. I think it's more important to deeply understand these issues than to cheerlead while playing match online. That's just me. Let us continue. This I find extremely interesting. I think that we're actually going to, I think we're going to do okay. I'm going to do this one, then I'm going to skip some of the budget stuff. Maybe we'll talk about that on Friday. That's my other episode this week, just so that y'all hear it. Tuesday, Friday this week, once again. Okay, so this is from Sunday in the Wall Street Journal. Trump's budget hawk takes over the DOGE agenda. First up, the military. Russ Vought, President Trump's top budget official, is looking to lock in many of Elon Musk's cost-cutting efforts once the billionaire CEO steps aside from government, a key part of his plan steamrolling Congress. Vought, the director of the White House Office of Management and Budget, has already drawn the ire of Republican national security hawks by insisting that military spending receive increases only through a procedure known as budget reconciliation, as opposed to the annual budget. Aside from the reconciliation spending, the White House budget blueprint proposed maintaining military spending at current budget levels of $892.6 billion. The move came even as Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and senior Republicans pushed for more funding, lawmakers and congressional aides said. Republican members of Congress and staff believe they had received assurances from Hegseth, some personally aides said, that the numbers would be larger and were shocked when the budget came out. They worry that getting a one-time boost through reconciliation would be temporary and not provide for long-term security needs. So the Uniparty is upset that we're not spending quite enough, according to Russ Vought, or, in Russ Vaught's budget on the military. Trump, for his part, told Saudi Arabia and the people gathered there today, we'll see some of this later, that they're looking to spend $1 trillion. Hanging over the tensions is Vaught's public push. This is skipping down, by the way. Public push for Trump's authority to impound funds. That is at the heart of everything. We've been talking about that for over a year now. A move that involves the president refusing to spend money appropriated by Congress and could set off a fight between lawmakers and the White House on who controls the nation's purse strings. A senior OMB official said during a recent call with reporters that impoundment hasn't been taken off the table. And impoundment should never be taken off the table. It is a power of the executive branch that absolutely must be pulled back to the executive branch and taken away from Congress. The executive branch cannot constitutionally and should not be forced to spend all of the money that Congress determines. Vought is a longtime budget guru who served at OMB during Trump's first term. He has said he wants to halt efforts by Democrats to demand parity, in which increased military spending is matched by a similar boost in domestic spending. That is partly why Vought has favored using reconciliation to funnel more money to the Pentagon. An OMB spokeswoman said that a major point of the budget proposal was to overcome Democrat demands for parity between defense and non-defense spending and to provide the Pentagon with a $1 trillion budget. And just a couple sections near the bottom. Democrats have assailed the Trump administration's budget proposal and use of DOGE to downsize the federal government, arguing that it undermines congressional authority, and have attempted in vain to force Musk to appear before Congress. And good luck on that one. In the coming months, DOGE is expected to focus more on regulation cutting, according to a February 19th executive order that instructed agency leaders to begin rescinding unlawful regulations in coordination with DOGE and OMB. So that is very interesting. Vought is also likely to turn his attention to what is commonly known as Schedule F, an executive order that Trump issued in October 2020 to eliminate job protections for thousands of high-level federal workers. The Biden administration blocked the order, but Trump reintroduced it in an executive order that says it will restore accountability to the career civil service. So these are huge things. Giving Russ Vought, who's been directing the budget efforts, purview over cutting regulations via DOGE and using Schedule F to eliminate who knows how many federal workers. And so all of these things are well in line with the agenda. This looks to me like progress. And from what I can tell, I mean, it's my judgment. You don't have to go along with it. But Russ Vought seems like a damn good guy as far as I'm concerned. And I would really encourage everyone to take the time and listen to the interview he did on Tucker Carlson's podcast. I think it was back in, I want to say November, but it could have been earlier last year. Anyhow, let us continue moving. We're going to just touch on some geopolitical stuff and then spend most of the time on Saudi Arabia. This is Benjamin Netanyahu, who seems to be doing everything he can to push back against rumors of America potentially recognizing a Palestinian state. We talked about this on Friday. I think it's 147 countries in the world. 75% of the countries in the United Nations already recognize a Palestinian state. whether Gaza is a construction project or there is a war there, or more likely than the quote unquote war is just a widespread coordinated attempt to eliminate terrorist organizations, which are the private armies of the global regime, in the same way that there's an effort to eliminate the cartels, which again are private armies of the global regime. So if Israel under Netanyahu is doing its part to eliminate regime funded, directed, controlled terrorist organizations in the Middle East, well, then good on them. But otherwise, we should just take this at its surface level interpretation, which is not a good one.
דברים השתנו. אנחנו עומדים, לא רוצה להגיד דברים, אנחנו בימים קרובים מאוד.
Oh, no. That's terrible. I thought we had the translation on the video. Here is the translation. We are going in with everything to dismantle him, this being Hamas. They may offer to release more hostages. We'll take them and then proceed. We're going all the way. On the question of Gaza's population, he added, there's a problem. Countries must be willing to take them in. If given the chance, half of Gaza's population would leave. He concluded firmly, Hamas will no longer exist in Gaza. So there is expected to be another round of attacks on Gaza, however you might like to say that. I've said a bunch of times, a lot of them probably are going to leave, and they will be taken in by what that Palestinian state will ultimately be, shown to us at least, once the lines on the map are redrawn. And we are in a period of the lines on maps being redrawn. They're being redrawn in Asia. They're being redrawn in the Middle East. They're being redrawn in Ukraine and Europe. And we're going to see that in, I think, South America as well, with Venezuela and Guyana, maybe Argentina and the Falkland Islands. There's the regime leaving, and the country that is actually geographically and obviously the place those lands should be attached to, taking back those lands or incorporating them into some sort of sovereign nationalist system where they are guaranteeing security or whatever else. So I think we will continue to see this in the future. Rocks cry out in the chat, $20. Pam Bondi / TV characters is a Chris Paul proof with a cry face laughing emoji. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I wish it wasn't the sort of thing where you need to be proven right about these sorts of things. It's my approach is, and has always been, and anyone who's watched the show for any amount of time would know, that we look at a variety of meanings to virtually everything. And if a pattern emerges, like, hey, there are like 30 members of the cast of Fox News being named to positions in and around the administration, maybe there's something to the whole TV character thing. But I know that's crazy. It's funny. Someone in my chat, I think it was yesterday, said that the trust the planners at this point are beginning to sound like everyone in 2020 screaming, trust the doctors and trust the experts. And I think that they are exactly right. It's people who don't actually know what they're talking about, who provide no depth of analysis, who just consistently form consensus and then use struggle sessions online to protect that consensus, saying that this is part of the plan. Well, yeah, if you believe everything is part of the plan, then it's definitely part of the plan. And if you believe that every part of the plan that you can detect is part of a plan is good, then you've trusted the plan and know that it's good. Congratulations. Why is that like an acceptable place for analysis to end? Wow, look at that. They found another match online. What does it mean? Oh, no one knows. It's good. We should cheerlead for it until it turns bad, or, someone in a position of authority tells us that we're allowed to think other things, and then maybe we'll consider other options. It's moronic. It's antithetical to the purpose of this entire period. And by the way, to the purpose of the Q op. Don't you trust Q? What do you mean? I can trust these things and still not trust the interpretations of these things relayed to me by morons. Simple. Simple. Divining rod 555, $5 appropriately. Just a praying hands emoji. Maybe that's a thank you. Maybe that's prayers for me. I'm not sure, but I will accept it either way. And he says, that's why I rock with you, Chris. Raw senses and very reasonable. Thank you very much for that. And, you know, when we are in these periods of obvious subversion from forces that people believe are allied and aligned and obviously inside the gates, I think it's important to be a little extra discerning, but people aren't extra discerning. They're extra concerned about unity. And what for? What could the unity be for? Why do people who don't work want a free pass devoid of criticism? What is the unity for? We're going to win an election with unity? What's the unity for? We're trying to wake people up, aren't we? This is the awakening process. We're trying to understand that we've been deceived about what our world is and trying to put the pieces back together, admitting that we had been indoctrinated with all of these lies. That's the point. Figuring out how to do that reliably based on principles and morals so that we build a solid foundation underneath our thinking so that we can process situations as they arise in the future rather than just playing match online and being, look, I found a connection to something I saw on the internet 8 years ago. That means we're winning. It's retarded. It's time to move on. It's time to grow up. It's adolescent nonsense. It is a disservice to everyone who is still consuming it. And the fact that people are getting paid and do it so they can get paid from that attention is pathetic. Let us continue. India and Pakistan, we talked about that briefly last week. They went to quote unquote war for like 48 hours, and no one can prove they were actually at war. But we have to believe that they are because now everyone said it. And there were like 3 videos on the internet of indiscriminate fires happening wherever, like an AI video of a plane blowing up in the sky. And we're like, oh, it's war. On Saturday morning, Trump says, after a long night of talks mediated by the United States, I am pleased to announce that India and Pakistan have agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire. Congratulations to both countries on using common sense and great intelligence. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Wonderful. How about that? Trump got on the horn with India and Pakistan, and just like 2 seconds later, their war was over. Did it ever start? Who cares at this point? We won. Oh, man. Here's another one from Trump on Truth Social. I am very proud of the strong and unwaveringly powerful leadership of India and Pakistan for having the strength, wisdom, and fortitude to fully know and understand that it was time to stop the current aggression that could have led to so 2 twos in there, TO, led to the death and destruction of so many and so much. Millions of good and innocent people could have died. Your legacy is greatly enhanced by your brave actions. I am proud that the USA was able to help you arrive at this historic and heroic decision. While not even discussed, I am going to increase trade substantially with both of these great nations. Additionally, I will work with you both to see if, after, quote, 1,000 years, a solution can be arrived at concerning Kashmir. God bless the leadership of India and Pakistan on a job well done. How about that? He's going to help resolve a 1,000-year-old territorial dispute between 2 nations. Wow. It's like Russia's relationship with the Ukraine, the outer regions of Russia. That's what Ukraine means. And of course, Kyiv, around 1,000 years ago, was the capital of Russia. And someone can check me on that, but I'm pretty sure that that I'm not saying the wrong thing. It's been a long time since I've looked at that. And anytime it's a long time since I've looked at something and I say something confidently, I worry, wait a second, am I getting that wrong? So Trump is going to be the peacemaker when it comes to Kashmir. And he's already the peacemaker on this quote unquote war that we were told was definitely happening between India and Pakistan. Whatever it was, he resolved it immediately. Oh, problem solved. You terroristed our people in Kashmir. Okay, well, now problem solved. Is that how the world works? I can't say yes or no, because ultimately I don't have access to that kind of knowledge, but it doesn't seem to generally work that way. And when you understand that the battle is between the global good twin and the global evil twin, then which of those sides starts unprovoked wars and military kinetic conflict? It's the evil twin side. And so, and which side wages campaigns of terrorism and cartel violence? Well, those are the private armies of the global regime. So once again, it's the evil twin side launching the terrorist attacks worldwide. It's always them. Amazing, isn't it? And they're always attached to global intelligence. It's one of those patterns that just never fails. So if a terrorist incident by the global regime is going to cause a kinetic conflict between two neighboring nuclear-powered nations, then we have a big problem on our hands. Because who profits from massive kinetic conflict? Well, again, it's the global regime, right? And it would require then the global regime elements in at least one of the countries to be in control. And so if that war gets shut down in 24 hours, leading any rational person to believe that never actually happened, well then, what do we have? We have proof that the global regime is not in control in either of those places, or that the leverage is so great to effectively make it so that they are not in control. And what I mean by that, it's a very close distinction. Okay. So they might not be in control at all, meaning they might not have any level of access to the top decision-making aspects of government. That's entirely possible. It's also possible that they do have that level of control, but forces from outside have such leverage against them that no matter what level of official control they have within a government, they are still not able to do things that would end up moving outside of the acceptable parameters. And I think it's important to understand different levels of control rather than just saying, oh, everything's in total control. Okay, well, why does this happen? Well, I don't know. Let me see if I can find a match online and then I'll tell you. Coincidence? Yeah, maybe it's a coincidence. Oh, I love it. Okay. I was just checking in on the chat for a second. Oh, we're having fun. We're having fun. Let's keep going. All right. So speaking of Russia and Ukraine, we also have some motion on that. And there's going to be more motion this week. And on Friday, I'm sure we'll spend some ample time on this subject. But on Saturday, Donald Trump said a potentially great day for Russia and Ukraine. Think of the hundreds of thousands of lives that will be saved as this never-ending bloodbath hopefully comes to an end. It will be a whole new and much better world. I will continue to work with both sides to make sure that it happens. The USA wants to focus instead on rebuilding and trade, a big week upcoming. So Putin and the comedic actor in Ukraine are slated to meet this week in Turkey. And there's some hint that maybe Trump will go. My friend Ghost of Base Patrick Henry has been projecting that now for about a week. And then, of course, people online steal his takes and act as though they're their own. Same people who figured out that there were biolabs in Ukraine after other people in that person's group had already told them that. And after the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs had released their documents to that effect. It's amazing. How do you figure these things out? But anyhow, so will Putin and Zelensky meet? Will Trump go to meet them? That is what my friend Ghost thinks. I think he's onto something. Be amazing to see that. Regardless of Trump's attendance, because he's already kind of over in that part of the world, Steve Witkoff and Keith Kellogg, General Keith Kellogg, are both anticipated to attend those meetings. So that in itself is quite interesting. Also on Saturday, Trump on Truth Social, a very good meeting today with China in Switzerland. Many things discussed, much agreed to. A total reset negotiated in a friendly but constructive manner. We want to see, for the good of both China and the U.S., an opening up of China to American business. Great progress made. So a trade deal in the works with China, and they've announced it's all happening. Is it the same trade deal from 2020? We'll get into that in just a second. But first, why are they meeting in Switzerland? Well, what is Switzerland? Switzerland is the seat of global governance. It is the home of the global regime and the global governance bodies. We've talked many times about China as a potential avatar for the global regime, the conflict with China, the conflict with Russia. Anytime Trump is saying a nation is our enemy, he is talking about factions within that nation, the evil twin faction within that nation, or using that nation as an avatar of the problem. And so China is an avatar of the trade problem. But the meeting is in Switzerland. So who are the other parties in that meeting? Why does that meeting have to occur in Switzerland? I would posit that's because the actual negotiation when it comes to global trade is between the sovereign nationalist countries, of which the United States under Trump and China under Xi are both, and the evil twin faction, which is the global governance, representing the global regime. Those are the two sides, international banking and finance and the global governing bodies. This was the same negotiation that was happening on the same set of issues leading up to World War II. Okay. It was the same global government, same global governing bodies, different iterations, perhaps, different characters, obviously, but the same agenda, the same dynamics at stake and at play. And so the meeting happens in Switzerland, and it was successful. The losing side in all of this is the centralized top-down system of control over the world economy by the global regime, by these global governing bodies. They're going to be the losing side throughout all of this. All the deals Trump makes in a bilateral sense chip away at the global regime's system of top-down control. That's the point. That's why each and every one of these announcements is so big. China is a massive one. Imagine by the end of this week, we have a deal with China, a deal with the UK first, a deal with China, a deal with Saudi, and a deal with Russia. What at that point does the global regime have left? Do we not have things under control in South America? Do they have like their stronghold in South America? No. Do they have a stronghold in Africa? No. In the Middle East? No. I mean, Israel? Maybe. But Israel seems to be playing within the parameters, generally speaking. Do they have it in Europe? No. Or they would have been able to save Ukraine. So again, and trade deal with India and Pakistan, of course, in the offing right after that. Every powerful country will make in succession deals with Donald Trump. And at that point, the regime will not have anything left because they don't have the power that they had in World War II, which again is why they're going to try to turn Trump into Hitler and us all into Nazis so that they can win the public relations game, get enough people back on their side that the people force the regime agenda back on the entire world. That's all they've got left. That's their only choice, which again is why it's pointless to spend our time looking at the results of someone playing match online every day rather than understanding what's actually happening in the world and what it means in the scope of history and what it means for our future and how we should respond to it and how we should guide our finances and our life and how we should think about our families. Where is any of that? It's all gone. It's all gone. Oh, we're winning. Hey, look, I've decoded Trump's purple tie. Oh, hey, bro, his tie's not purple. It's like the evergreen thing. Oh, look, it used to mean that that container ship stuck in the Suez Canal. And now it means Andrew Jackson's tree at the White House. Moronic. Lance, 2002. I'm your moderator. Thanks for making my afternoon domestic chores much more palatable. Well, thank you for your support, and I am happy to assist. Starborn in the chat says, imagine how much more popular CP in Badlands would be if people gave credit. Yeah, strange, isn't that? Real strange how that works. Imagine we weren't censored. Imagine what people might think about then. Imagine what kind of progress we could make then. Man, it's crazy, isn't it? Here is Scott Bessent from over the weekend, if I can find my clip. Bessent, China deal. Come on. Come on. Ah, there we go. Whew.
To happen is it has to be fair for the American people. But in January 2020, President Trump produced a template. We had an excellent trade agreement with China, and the Biden administration chose not to enforce it. The Chinese delegation basically told us that once President Biden came into office, they just ignored their obligations. So, we all already have a large framework. The other thing to remember here, Jonathan, is that this is a pause down to 10%. The April 2nd level for China is 34%. So we will be working to see where their final reciprocal number ends up. And the negotiations are a combination of tariffs, non-tariff trade barriers, currency manipulation, and subsidies of labor and capital.
All right. So he talks about a deal that was in place, and then the Biden administration went back on that. Same thing with the drug pricing. Same thing with so many things that we have talked about for these many years. And we're seeing them all come back around now as if they were put in place for the entire period. And some of them, I imagine, were probably still in effect, or at least they were still abided by, regardless of whether or not they were in effect. And so I posted this yesterday on Truth Social, and it was met by people who are prominent members of the truth community beginning to direct message my friends to tell them to make me shut up again. Just like last year when I was talking about our fake elections. Always the same characters, always. But hey, man, I guess everybody picks and chooses, right? Trump in 2020 has a trade deal with China, has a deal with Xi to stop the fentanyl trade, has a plan worked out for TikTok. Trump in 2025 has a trade deal with China, has a deal with Xi to stop the fentanyl trade, has a plan worked out for TikTok. But in the meantime, while quote unquote Joe Biden was president, Xi was doing everything in his power to destroy the US and its people, and Trump kept saying nice things about him, only to quickly make a deal that balances the relationship between the two countries and destroys the regime's top-down control over the world economy. You'd have to be retarded to believe this. And I think you would have to be retarded to believe that. Xi and the rest of these world leaders who Trump had deals in place with in 2020 spent the entire time that Trump, quote unquote, wasn't president, attacking the United States and its people, flooding fentanyl into our country to kill our people. And Trump continued saying nice things about Xi the entire time and is now making a deal with him. Does that make any sense? Of course it does not make sense. So why do these very same people think that it does? Well, they haven't thought about any of these things, and they haven't had anyone in a position of authority tell them it is acceptable to think this. So they have to reject it. Pointless, moronic, cannot get us ahead. They are still playing at the pace of the mainstream media. Why? Well, it's hard if the media is not, feeding you new stuff to play match with, and you're not allowed to think ahead, and you're not allowed to say anything that's not already approved from the top. What are we doing? What are we doing? Yes. Let's hear Trump talk about she. This was a month ago.
They've really taken advantage of our country for a long period of time. They've ripped us off beyond nobody. How people stood for it, sitting in my position, is not even believable. And we're talking about many presidents, not just a couple. But they did, and all we're doing is putting it back in shape. We're resetting the table. And I'm sure that we'll be able to get along very well. I have great respect for President Xi. He's been, in a true sense, he's been a friend of mine for a long period of time. And I think that we'll end up working out something that's very good for both countries. I look forward to it.
He's been a very good friend to Donald Trump for a long time. While Joe Biden was the fake president, he was flooding fentanyl into our country to kill the American people. And Trump saying that about him? No, I don't think so. That's ridiculous. Again, we're talking about the pharma companies. Who floods the fentanyl in? Well, it's obviously the pharma companies. It's their agenda. It's always been their agenda. They've killed countless people around the world for generations. But no, it's she. And Trump's still friends with him, and they're still just able, a few months into Trump's term, to make a deal. Oh, she has decided that he's not going to kill our citizens anymore, and he's my best friend. Give me a break. And let's actually go back and see that Trump has been saying this for quite a long time. This is from 2024, but he's made this same part of his rally speech numerous times in 2022, 2023, etc. He tells this story over and over again. So in that middle period, were things different? That's the question. All right, now play.
We've never had massive amounts of drugs pouring into our country. We fought it like hell. We were fighting. And by the way, you'll never solve the problem without the death penalty. When I was in China, I was with President Xi, 1.4 billion people, strong guy. And we got along well until COVID. I said, the hell with it. It wasn't. What they unleashed on the world was incredible. But we got along well, and he was going to stop the fentanyl coming into the United States. But I said to him, you have first meeting, a little naive question, but it's all right. Not so bad. Do you have a drug problem? No. We don't have a drug problem. No, don't you have any? No, we have no drug problem. Why? Swift trial. I said, what is Swift trial? Swift trial. What Swift trial is, they catch the drug dealer, and they give him a swift trial, meaning a very fast trial. At the end of the trial, if he's guilty, they execute him. Every drug dealer in China said, let's get the hell out of here, let's go to the United States, where you don't even get a slap on the wrist, right? And I don't know that our country's ready for it, and I'll be honest with you, if you really knew the stats, a drug dealer on average, during that drug dealer's life, will kill approximately 500 people. You know that, Paul? 500 people will die. Families, family members, children, young children, girls, boys, parents sometimes too. 500 people on average. And when you hear that, it doesn't sound so severe. You know, we set up blue ribbon committees at the White House.
And we can leave it there. But the point is, she was prepared to put fentanyl suppliers to death in 2020 when Trump was president. And then in that 4-year period, he said, hell with that. I'm just going to flood fentanyl into the United States and kill American citizens. And then Trump's going to come back and be my best friend. That does not make any sense. That does not make any sense. And when something makes so little sense as to be impossible, then you understand it as impossible and figure out what the other options could be. Not say to yourself, well, that's still what everybody's saying, so I'm going to have to just go with that. Really? Really? Everybody wakes up at their own pace. If people are unwilling to think for themselves, we will be stuck here forever. Ali Stussy, $10 in the chat. We appreciate you. Thank you very much. I appreciate you too. Artsy Jones says, help Chris out by hitting the thumbs up. Thank you. John Henry Bonzo, good to see you. $10. I'll second that. We appreciate your work and opinions, Chris. Be well and press on, as I will. Thank you for supporting all these many years. Let us continue moving forward. So let's talk about the China trade deal for just a couple of minutes and go into some of the details. I asked ChatGPT, I'm just going to give a quick rundown here because, again, this is a temporary deal. There will be a bigger deal later, as I and my good buddy, Patel Patriot John Harold, have been talking about for quite a while, separately and together. We both expect the trade deal to be the exact same trade deal that was put in place in 2020. And the fentanyl policies will be the exact same fentanyl policies put in place in 2020. And the outcome of the TikTok situation will be the exact same outcome that was put in place in 2020. And if you know that all that's true, then are you able to bridge that gap in your understanding and say, well, that structure of that deal must have remained in place. So everything else that contradicts that understanding should probably be rejected. So key terms of the agreement. The United States agreed to reduce tariffs on Chinese goods from 145% to 30%, while China lowered its tariffs on U.S. products from 125% to 10%. These reductions are set for a 90-day period. The U.S. maintained a 20% tariff on certain Chinese goods linked to the fentanyl crisis. China lifted a ban on Boeing plane deliveries, signaling a move toward easing tensions in specific sectors. The agreement is a 90-day truce aimed at de-escalating trade tensions and providing a window for further negotiations. I said, are there any indications that the deal will essentially be the same one that they worked out in 2020? The 2025 deal shares some surface similarities with the Phase 1 deal negotiated by Presidents Trump and Xi, but there are notable differences in scope, intent, and execution. And one would expect that when revisiting a deal 5 years later, there are going to be some amendments and some updates and the rest of it. Conclusion, while the 2025 trade agreement echoes the 2020 Phase 1 deal in its use of tariff reductions to ease tensions, it differs significantly in its scope, enforcement, and strategic intent. The current agreement is more of a temporary truce aimed at de-escalation without the detailed commitments and structural reform goals that characterized the earlier deal. And again, I think that obviously makes total sense in line with what I just said, which was this is a temporary deal. When we reach that final understanding and all the details are out there, I think we're going to see that it's very similar to that that Phase 1 trade deal with whatever updates. Polymathanon in the chat, $10. Here. I love Chris Paul, no homo. APL has a secret crush on Gutfeld, I think. Don't know about that, but I do know about this. And for all I know, this could be a mating call.
And Panoonah. All right.
I mean, the more I hear it, at first I was like, he didn't really go, his voice, I can't speak right now. Unbelievable. His voice went the wrong direction. It kind of like he should have gone up and it went down on the Luna. But the more I listen to it, the more I'm like, okay, well, yeah, he's obviously copying that. The rhythm is right on. I don't know what to say. All right. Where are we? Trade deal. This I found funny. Starborn sent this my way yesterday. So we have a battle here between Tim Miller of The Bulwark, a never Trump, quote unquote, conservative site, the Puka Shells guy who was on that Showtime show. We did plenty of Tim Miller coverage a couple of years back. He said, reacting to this China trade deal, he said, yay, so happy that we will be paying 20% higher taxes on all Chinese goods in exchange for nothing. Great victory, Chairman Trump. And then posts some nonsense in Chinese lettering. I'm going to show the whole conversation here, but it's just in screenshots. Stephen Miller responds, fascinating to watch the left embrace the position that all American factories should be relocated to Asia. And of course, Tim Miller still keeps up the pretense that he is a conservative, which makes him on the right and not on the left, even though he is a global regime statist and ipso facto must be a leftist. If you do not want to put a 30% tariff on American consumers in exchange for literally nothing, you are on the left now. Fascinating. I'm sure Chairman Trump appreciates your loyalty. And Tim Miller is exceedingly gay. So if the way I'm doing his voice makes him sound gay, well, then that's just part of my accuracy. Stephen Miller responds, this is what constitutes economic analysis now on the political left. And he calls him a leftist again. Zero tariff free trade with China and Asia would mean the end of the U.S. manufacturing base. And of course, he's obviously right about it. Tim Miller responds once again, manufacturing is down this year because of your incompetent trade war. So your econ policy has yielded a 20% tax increase on consumers and fewer manufacturing jobs so far. Keep tweeting through it, though. I'm sure Chairman Trump will deliver a bountiful fall harvest. Okay. The dude wears a puka shell necklace all the time. Stephen Miller says, inflation is way down and manufacturing is way up. If we removed all tariffs, all the factories would be in China and Asia, which is what you want. We just have fundamentally different priorities. We choose America. And obviously, that is the right choice. And one last, let's just do this headline and then we'll get to Saudi Arabia because I have a lot on that too. But it's a lot of video. I think that Trump gave, I'll save it for 1 second. So the headline in CNBC yesterday, tariff receipts topped $16 billion in April, a record that helped cut the budget deficit. CNBC was forced to report that. But sure, Tim Miller's probably got it right. So to Saudi Arabia. Now, actually, let's start here. I found this very funny. We have talked about how the news wires were demoted by the White House, and we have some more of that today. This is one of Trump's rapid response and spokesman, Stephen Chung, saying, oh no, a strongly worded email, and FOH means F out of here, and you can figure out what the F means. White House Correspondents Association statement on the unprecedented exclusion of wires on international trip. For the first time since the White House press corps started traveling with American presidents abroad, no wire service reporter is aboard Air Force One today. As the president travels across the ocean for high-stakes meetings in the Middle East, the White House has decided not to include any wire reporter on the presidential aircraft. The White House pool was created to be representative of the different types of media outlets that serve different readers. Leaving out the wires is a disservice to Americans who need news about their president, especially on foreign trips where anything could happen and the consequences can impact the entire world. If you have read or watched the news, you've relied on the words written and transmitted immediately by wire reporters from the Associated Press, Bloomberg, or Reuters. Their reports are distributed quickly to thousands of news outlets and millions of readers throughout the world every day, so all have equal access to coverage of the presidency. The change is a disservice to every American who deserves to know what their highest elected leader is up to as quickly as possible. The White House Correspondents Association is disturbed by this new restriction on who can cover this White House and continued retaliation for independent editorial decisions. The White House Correspondents Association is advocating for the wire service journalists to return to their seats on Air Force One, where they have reliably covered every president for decades. Not for us, but for the millions of Americans who depend on their reporting every day. Well, the truth is, people do not depend on their reporting. The mainstream media depends on their reporting because their reporting is upstream of mainstream media content. People, the American consumers, also do not depend on mainstream media content. They have been made dependent on this supply chain of information. And above, by the way, the wire services and these global regime propaganda outlets are intelligence organizations serving the global regime. That's where the information comes from. So Americans have been made dependent on this informational supply chain, but that doesn't mean that they actually do depend on that informational supply chain. They don't need it. If it went away, something else would arise in its place. Because people do need information. They just don't need bad information. They don't need information that is manipulated by global regime intelligence organizations before it reaches the people. And so they're being cut out. Why should anyone be upset about that? If you want full access to the government, well, you've got a pretty transparent government. If you want more access than that, well, there are reporters that do travel with them. It's just not these totally corrupted wire services going to a place like Saudi Arabia. Now, who knows what the ultimate reason for this decision was, but it's not something to get upset about. They're going to paint this as Trump being a dictator. This is Trump being Hitler. He's going to war against the free press. You're not a free press. You're a corporate press that operates to help the implementation of the global regime's agenda. The idea that these are independent news sources trying to faithfully deliver the truth to the American people is preposterous. All right, so let's check in with Donald Trump. Now, I believe that today was incredibly significant for reasons I stated earlier, but also because Trump gave one of the best and probably most important speeches I've ever seen him give. And I would put it as like on par with the speeches before the UN and before the World Economic Forum. This is Trump planting a flag in the global geopolitical dynamic that is not going to be removed. And so we'll get to the speech in a second, but first I want to kind of present how Saudi Arabia presented themselves to Donald Trump and how they presented Donald Trump to the world, because there is this is a greeting like I've never seen. So let's start here with the fighter jets escorting Air Force One. Saudi fighter jets making sure that Air Force One is safe as it flies over Middle Eastern airspace. Let's keep going. Then we have the entrance. As soon as I can find it. Here we are. That is, for those listening, that is audio of cannons being fired off upon Trump touching down and descending the staircase from Air Force One. Purple carpet on that staircase and a purple carpet rolled out for Trump to walk upon. Now, again, people thought that that was a purple tie. It is a red tie with a blue kind of crosshatch checkered effect over it. And Ghost of Base Patrick Henry looked into that today upon seeing, the claims about purple tie, and then people playing Match Online decided to actually give that a look. Now, other people have said, by the way, that this is meant to be lavender, which is a popular color in Saudi Arabia that signifies hospitality. But in a broader sense, purple signifies royalty. And I would suggest, as you watch these, consider whether Trump is once again being portrayed as king of the world or king of at least this North American region, if nothing else. And I think that that's becoming unquestionable at this point. Let's play a little bit more of this. Mohammed bin Salman comes to the landing, to the bottom of the stairs where Trump descends from Air Force One and greets him and shakes his hand. He comes to the tarmac himself to greet Trump and for this extravagant display. That's not the normal custom. He normally sends an emissary to meet the foreign leaders and then greets them once they arrive at, I think it's the palace, but forgive me if I'm wrong about how they refer to the meeting location that we will see shortly. So quite a long receiving line, an enormous Saudi delegation, and Trump has a sizable delegation of his own. Noticeably absent from that delegation is J.D. Vance, and that's not because J.D. is getting left out due to his irrelevance. It's because the vice president doesn't travel with the president, quote unquote, blah, 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 because they're worried about continuity of government and the like. So when a president goes to foreign shores, the vice president remains in America. But again, an incredible entrance there, a long receiving line, Trump being introduced to various Saudi officials. Let's continue on his path to his destination here. This is unbelievable. That is quite a display. American and Saudi flags flying, held in the hands of men dressed in white on horseback, all white horses, as that probably is the beast, delivers Donald Trump to the destination. You can skip ahead a bit here. Just Saudi, I mean, I got to assume that these are prominent Saudis, members of the royal family, prominent members of the Saudi business community. I don't know that to be true, but it looks to be the case. A long line of them just lined up waiting to wave hello to Donald Trump's vehicle as he arrives. Man, that is quite an entrance. And maybe this is actually from the airport, so I didn't mean to go out of order here. But no, maybe not. I don't know. No, I think this is from the airport. So they played the American national anthem. Trump stood in salute. Again, quite a display. So let's just remember the sort of entrance they gave Donald Trump and the sort of treatment that Donald Trump was given last time, everybody famously remembers the famous sword dance. That is pretty extravagant treatment. Could you imagine getting that greeting? Like all of this is happening because I'm going to walk from here to there. That's really something. Now it's important to provide the proper context to remember the situation with one Joseph Robinette Biden from the fake presidency, when the fake president visited Saudi Arabia to beg for oil and was denied. He was basically, they sent an Uber to the airport and Biden took the car to the palace, where Mohammed bin Salman greeted him with a fist bump, said not a word to him, turned around and walked in, because, of course, Joe Biden carried no weight on the world stage aside from regime-oriented governments. And Saudi Arabia is not one of those. They are a sovereign nationalist government that is very much aligned with Donald Trump and was throughout those last 4 years. Isn't it amazing that they didn't, like China, they didn't take advantage of the fact that Trump was away and do all these terrible things? They didn't take all this advantage of the United States of America because they knew that Trump was coming back and they were going to have to work with them, just like China, just like Russia, just like all of them. And for some reason, truthers are opposed to understanding that. Q people are opposed to understanding that. How? Honestly, how? I mean, it's like the idea, that very tour, that trip, all of that is commonly referred to as the submission tour or the capitulation tour. Trump went around to all these other nations and was treated like a king, showing the world with the optics that all of these were alliances being formed and that these situations were under control, and nothing has changed since then. And we're seeing now, obviously, that nothing has changed since then. And again, it's impossible that anything would have or could have changed since then, unless these people were going to compromise their relationship with Donald Trump and thereby compromise the rest of the project. The idea that that occurred while the fake president was president is preposterous, which also makes it more preposterous to believe that the fake president was a real president. But then again, truthers spent the entire time analyzing it as though Joe Biden was president and that everything that was happening on TV was real, and that our elections were real, even under the fake president, while we could watch them be stolen. And therefore, we have to devote all our energy to voting as hard as possible in another fake election, which, again, Trump has called fake over and over again. I don't need to show you. All right. Let us continue. Actually, let us pause just for a second and to take care of a slight bit of business with Rumble and Rumble Premium. When Rumble first started in 2013, they built a platform for the small creator. They didn't censor or have biases. They were fair and treated all creators equally. No one thought platforms would censor political conversation or censor opinions on COVID, but they did. Facebook admitted they fell to pressure from the Biden and Harris administration. Rumble did not. They held the line. They are attacked daily for giving us a voice to talk to you. They are attacked in corporate media. They are attacked by governments like France. They're attacked from brand advertisers who refuse to work with them. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers. They don't get much of it. Watching our show on Rumble is the most they can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now's the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we are just happy you watch us here on Rumble. All right. And thank you to Rumble for providing the platform and the opportunity to put content like this out without getting censored. And, you know, to be honest, YouTube hasn't been censoring my show for the last 5 months, since December, I think it was the last time. So that's good. And maybe we're past the censorship phase. Makes you wonder about who was directing the censorship the entire time. Maybe we'll know more in the future, or maybe they'll go back to the censorship model. Who knows? But for now, I am over there, and it's possible that people are actually watching over there. And I suppose I might as well just check briefly, or quickly, I should say, on that, because I don't want people to feel that they are being ignored. That would be just terrible. That's not the kind of thing I would want to do to those people following. And while we're at it, if you are on YouTube and you use it frequently, take 2 seconds, please, and go follow my channel over there. I am hopeful that once I hit the follower mark, then new features are opened and maybe you kind of get some fortification over there. So that would be cool if you can give a follow. And with that, oh, look, Tweeter Trash is over there. How about that? So is my pal Ron, Kathy LaBelle. Look at all these people. Thank you, guys. Wiggle Room. I would never ignore you now that you yell at me. Okay. Thanks for tuning in on these other platforms, you all. I appreciate you all very much. And let us now continue with Trump's incredible trip to Saudi Arabia, his trip to the Middle East that has just gotten started and is already the most incredible thing that one can witness. So it turns out that in addition to members of his administration, you know, cabinet secretaries Susie Wiles, Stephen Miller, one Elon Musk also showed up in Saudi Arabia. And Trump, we've talked about how Trump manhandles people with his handshakes. He's manhandled Emmanuel Macron. He's manhandled Justin Trudeau. He kind of went over the top on a handshake with Netanyahu. He signifies things in these handshakes. So keep an eye on his handshake with Elon Musk. See that? Pulls it right in, holds on to it. And does Elon tap out of that handshake? It looks like he raises his hand toward it. I don't know. Maybe I'm seeing things. Let me watch it one more time. Perhaps not. I don't know. But interesting. Trump took an obviously dominant position in that handshake right in front of MBS, and extract whatever meaning from that, or perhaps there's no meaning that you choose. That is for you to discern on your own. Don't take my word for it. This is what I see. It doesn't have to be what you see. So, meeting with Mohammed bin Salman, and they give They give the statement. This is a statement of greeting and welcome. They give it in Arabic and then in English.
To hear, this decades-long strategic partnership will continue with more signings of agreements and memoranda of understanding at the Saudi-U.S. Investment Forum. In closing, we wish both nations a fruitful partnership and a prosperous future. Thank you.
Now, again, that's the Crown Prince. He is Saudi royalty, and Donald Trump is being treated like royalty. Let us go to X, formerly Twitter. Trump signing the economic agreement with Saudi Arabia. And MBS signing his. And they come to exchange and shake hands. Let us continue. Where are we here? All right. So what is in this new economic agreement with Saudi Arabia? Let me make sure I'm on the right. Here we are. I asked ChatGPT for a quick rundown. Key components of the U.S.-Saudi economic deal. An historic $142 billion arms deal was signed, marking the largest defense sales agreement in U.S. history. This includes advanced military equipment and services from over a dozen American defense firms, focusing on areas such as Air Force development, missile defense, and maritime security. Saudi Arabia committed to investing $20 billion in U.S. AI data centers and energy infrastructure. Additionally, tech giants like Google, Oracle, and Uber are involved in partnerships totaling $80 billion, aiming to advance transformative technologies in both countries. Agreements include $14.2 billion in U.S. energy exports, such as GE Vernova's gas turbines, and $4.8 billion in Boeing aircraft sales. U.S. companies like Hill International and AECOM are set to lead infrastructure projects within Saudi Arabia, including the development of King Salman International Airport and King Salman Park. And the Boeing thing is with China, and now it's with Saudi. And do you remember how we spent the last few years hearing Conning and Uniparty right normies telling us that Boeing was woke, the DEI, look at their planes crashing. And I was like, hey, that seems like an info op. That seems fake. And everybody's like, you can't call everything fake. Well, yeah, I can. Look. How is Boeing getting these deals if Boeing is the wokest DEI company ever and their planes always crash? How is it? Healthcare and pharmaceuticals. A $5.8 billion investment is planned for the development of a high-capacity IV fluid facility in Michigan, aiming to bolster the U.S. healthcare supply chain. The agreement includes several funds, such as a $5 billion energy investment fund, a $5 billion aerospace and defense technology fund, and a $4 billion global sports fund, each designed to channel substantial capital into American industries. You know, Saudi already has the LIV golf tournament, which is a competitor to the PGA. There is a new USFL. I would not be surprised. And I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's not a prediction or anything. It's something I think about every now and then. Is Saudi going to join Donald Trump in creating an NFL competitor for American football? Trump went that direction in the Art of the Deal days 40 years ago, And I would not be 30, 40 years ago, and I would not be surprised to see that happen again and for Saudi to be the partner in that. But overall, the total investment package was over $600 billion. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia signed agreements for judicial cooperation between their respective justice departments and coordination between the Pentagon and Saudi Ministry of Defense for modernization and development of the capabilities of the Saudi armed forces. So the Saudi Justice Department, working with Donald Trump's Justice Department, how much corruption was there from regime elements? And you think about deep state here, think about it over there. You think about the corruption and the compromise over here, think about it over there. What does their Justice Department know about the Bushes? What does our Justice Department know about certain Saudis? We're eventually going to have 9/11 disclosure on a much wider scale than we've seen so far. And of course, that was blamed on Saudi Arabia. And it does not make sense. Is there going to be coordination along those lines? Obviously, I can't say that with any confidence right now, but it seems like that would be an obvious area of collaboration. And in terms of regional diplomacy, President Trump expressed hope that Saudi Arabia would join the Abraham Accords and normalize relations with Israel. He also announced plans to lift all U.S. sanctions on Syria following the overthrow of its longtime leader. We're going to get some of that in the speech. Normalizing the relations with Israel, or a nation that is the power source in that region and committed to a Palestinian state, indicates the likelihood of the recognition by the U.S. of a Palestinian state. And they're saying, no, that's not going to happen. That can't happen. Well, yeah, you say the same thing about Crimea, and that's definitely going to happen. And already there exists a Palestinian state. And if Israel wants to remain a state, it seems obvious that whatever negotiations are happening has to bring peace to that region and keep both of those states in place. Doesn't seem like there's going to be any other option. And at this point, it's becoming obvious to at least me that there's no other way that can go. And again, these are dynamics that we have been following and tracking for 4 years. On this podcast, I have already said everything that we see happening at some point over the last 4 years. It's not magic, and it's not a result of playing Match Online. It is a result of thinking outside the box, using all the open source information and intelligence that we can get, and then trying to analyze it holistically, understanding as assumptions and premises certain irrefutable truths, like our elections are fake, and Joe Biden could then never be president. And yes, something else was going on behind the scenes for the last 4 years. That's it. But people failed to do that, instead preferring to go along with the mainstream television and play Match Online. Okay. Where are we now? All right, here we are. Trump posted this today on Truth Social, sharing some of his preferred views of this meeting, or images, I should say. I don't know how that just happened. Trump signing the deal, MBS signing the deal, and them walking to greet each other, as I just showed you. Pictures going off. Applause, big smiles. Let's keep going. This is Donald Trump's entrance to the Saudi Investment Forum, where he would then give this great speech.
Please welcome His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, Crown Prince and Prime Minister, and the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America, Mr. Donald Trump.
That is an absolutely magnificent venue. Crystal chandeliers hanging all over the place. Hundreds of prominent people, dignitaries on their feet welcoming Donald Trump. That is a spectacular entrance. And then they went above and beyond and did this. Wait, I sped through that because we don't need to hear the whole entrance song, but they played Donald Trump's God Bless the USA as part of his entrance, and everyone in the audience was on their feet the entire time. Many of them, as you saw, recording the occasion on their mobile phones. Does that seem like an American ally in our America, not the evil twin faction America? Yeah, that seems like about as good an ally as we could possibly have. That is an incredible greeting. And that's, I mean, the speech hasn't even started yet. Incredible. But let's get to the speech. And I'm going to probably try to keep my commentary to a relative minimum, but I really want to just get all this on the record so that everybody hears what this actually is.
And be welcomed back with such extraordinary generosity and warmth. I've never forgotten the exceptional hospitality showed to us by King Solomon, who's just, we talk about a great man. That is a great man. That is a great man, a great family. And that visit took place exactly 8 years ago. The graciousness of the royal family and the Saudi people is really unsurpassed, no matter where you go. Let me also thank the countless ministers, government officials, business leaders, and distinguished guests for that warm welcome. Very warm, and I know so many of you. I'd like to call out all of your names, but we have a lot of problems. We'd be here for a long time. We don't want that, so don't be upset. With this historic state visit, we celebrate more than 80 years of close partnership between the United States and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Ever since President Franklin Roosevelt met with King Solomon's father, King Abdul Aziz, aboard the USS Quincy in 1945, the U.S.-Saudi relationship has been a bedrock of security and prosperity. Today, we reaffirm this important bond, and we take the next steps to make our relationship closer, stronger, and more powerful than ever before. It is more powerful than ever before. And by the way, it will remain that way. We don't go in and out like other people. It will remain that way. I've come this afternoon to talk about the bright future of the Middle East, but first let me begin by sharing the abundance of a place called America. In less than 4 months, our new administration has achieved more than most other administrations accomplish in 4 years or even 8 years. We've actually done, for the most part, more. The day I took office, we inherited, thank you. Thank you. The day I took office, we inherited a colossal invasion on our southern border, an invasion like you'd never want to see here. Nobody should ever want to see it. But within weeks, we slashed illegal border crossings to an all-time low, down 99.999%. That's good, even for this great gentleman standing right in front of me. That's a good number. We had...
Here is so the interplay between Trump and Mohammed bin Salman throughout the day was like very buddy. These guys really like and respect each other quite a bit. And I think it's probably because they're both doing the same job in different places, as I believe you can say for Putin and for Xi. And people are like, how could you say that? We're basically at war with China. Really? Xi has been removing the deep state in China for like the last decade. They're ahead of us. Saudi might be ahead of us too. Just saying. It's important to keep an open mind about these things. Otherwise, we're just going to get hoodwinked by the television, as people have been getting, including myself, as we've been getting hoodwinked for our entire lives.
That was very popular, other than perhaps with Mexico. And most importantly, for the people in this room, the days of economic misery under the last administration are rapidly giving way to the greatest economy in the history of the world. We are rocking. The United States is the hottest country, with the exception of your country, I have to say, right? I'm not going to take that on. No, Mohammed, I'm not going to take that on. Wouldn't that be a terrible thing if I made that full statement? But I will not do it. You're hotter. At least as long as I'm up here, you're hotter.
So America's as hot as can be, but Saudi, while Trump's there, they get to be even hotter. Congratulations, Saudi Arabia. Here's another one.
Peninsula, beautiful place, by the way. Beautiful place. Exactly. Thank you. Exactly 8 years ago this month, I stood in this very room and looked forward to a future in which the nations of this region would drive the forces of terrorism and extremism, drive them right out of existence, and take your place among the proudest, most prosperous, most successful nations anywhere in the world as leaders of a modern and rising Middle East. So exciting. So exciting. Mohammed, do you sleep at night? How do you sleep? Just thinking.
And you'll notice, by the way, Elon Musk getting a very good position so that he is in the shot repeatedly whenever the cameras go to Mohammed bin Salman.
What a job. He tosses and turns like some of us. Tosses and turns all night. How do I make it even better all night? It's the ones that don't toss and turn. They're the ones that will never take you to the promised land, won't they? But you have done some job.
And talking about the nations of the region being prosperous, a big chunk of his speech was devoted to that. So let's get into some of that. Here he talks about Iran and 1979, and we don't have time to get into the CIA and regime takeover and whatever of Iran, but notice the stark difference that he describes.
Constructing the world's tallest skyscrapers in Jeddah and Dubai. Tehran's 1979 landmarks are collapsing into rubble and dust. They had it going for a little while under a much different system, but those buildings are largely falling apart, falling down, while you're building some of the world's biggest and most incredible infrastructure projects, buildings, all sorts of things you're building that nobody's ever even seen before. Iran's decades of neglect and mismanagement have left the country plagued by rolling blackouts lasting for hours a day. All the time you hear about it.
Is there a better future on the horizon for Iran? It seems like there is, and hopefully we'll have more news about that this week. This, I thought, was just incredible. I am so happy that he said all of these things because it is right in line with what we talk about continuously.
Crucial for the wider world to note this great transformation has not come from Western interventionists or flying people in beautiful planes giving you lectures on how to live and how to govern your own affairs. No, the gleaming marvels of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi were not created by the so-called nation builders, neocons, or liberal nonprofits like those who spent trillions and trillions of dollars failing to develop Kabul, Baghdad, so many other cities. Instead, the birth of a modern Middle East has been brought by the people of the region themselves, the people that are right here, the people that have lived here all their lives, developing your own sovereign countries, pursuing your own unique visions and charting your own destinies in your own way. It's really incredible what you've done. In the end, the so-called nation builders wrecked far more nations than they built, and the interventionists were intervening in complex societies that they did not even understand themselves. They told you how to do it, but they had no idea how to do it themselves. Peace, prosperity, and progress ultimately came not from a radical rejection of your heritage, but rather from embracing your national traditions and embracing that same heritage that you love so dearly.
And bin Salman gives that a rousing round of applause. So Donald Trump just blamed the global regime, the neocons, the globalists, the interventionists for the problems in the Middle East. That's all the nation building we used to hear about during the George W. Bush administration. That is a neocon priority. It always has been. He talks about Saudi Arabia and other countries of the region being sovereign and embracing their national identity. Sovereign nationalism as opposed to globalism. You run your country. We will help you run your country in the ways that you need it to be helped, because there's this transition period right now where the global regime has to be kept out so that they don't wage the same playbook successfully that they waged in Europe in World War II and then after. Got to have a different outcome this time. Therefore, we need the power sources in the world to be aligned against that thing. And that is what is being shown off here. They know it on their side. Trump is affirming that to them. And it seems like they are in total alignment. I think we're going to see the same thing with the other major global powers in the weeks to follow. This is another absolute banger. Whoever wrote this speech, and maybe it was Trump, but it was probably Stephen Miller. I think that he's been involved in writing a lot of these. Maybe it was Steve Bannon for all I know. But really incredible speech.
In recent years, far too many American presidents have been afflicted with the notion that it's our job to look into the souls of foreign leaders and use U.S. policy to dispense justice for their sins. They loved using our very powerful military, and now it's really the most powerful it's ever been. We just are getting a budget approved, $1 trillion, highest budget we've ever had in history for military, $1 trillion. And we're getting the greatest missiles, the greatest weapons. And, you know, I hate to do it, but you have to do it because we believe in peace through strength. You have to have the strength. Otherwise, bad things could happen. But hopefully, we'll never have to use any of those weapons. Seems to be an awfully big waste of money if you're never going to use them. But hopefully, we'll never have to use them because the destructive power of some of those weapons are like nobody's seen before. I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment, my job to defend America and to promote the fundamental interest of stability, prosperity, and peace. That's what I really want to do.
I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment and my job to defend America. That is one of the greatest things a president could ever say. I mean, that like makes me kind of emotional. Good for him. That's fantastic. That's exactly what everyone should want to see on the world stage. And yet, Trump's the bad guy. Why is Trump the bad guy? Oh, it's because he's destroying their system. That's why. Another real banger right here.
Well spent. And with the historic Abraham Accords that we're so proud of, all the momentum was aimed at peace, and it aimed very successfully. It's been an amazing thing, the Abraham Accords, and it's my fervent hope, wish, and even my dream that Saudi Arabia, a place I have such respect for, especially over the last fairly short period of time, what you've been able to do, but we'll soon be joining the Abraham Accords. I think it'll be a tremendous tribute to your country, and it will be something that's really going to be very important for the future of the Middle East. I took a risk in doing them, and they've been an absolute bonanza for the countries that have joined. The Biden administration did nothing for 4 years. We would have had it filled out. But it will be a special day in the Middle East with the whole world watching when Saudi Arabia joins us. And you'll be greatly honoring me, and you'll be greatly honoring all of those people that have fought so hard for the Middle East. And I really think it's going to be something special. But you'll do it in your own time, and that's what I want, and that's what you want, and that's the way it's going to be. When I left office, the only thing still standing between this region and its unbelievable potential was a small group of rogue actors and violent thugs seeking constantly to drag the Middle East backward and into havoc, mayhem, and indeed into war. Unfortunately, instead of confronting these destructive forces, the last U.S. administration chose to enrich them and empower them and give them billions and billions of dollars. The Biden administration, the worst administration in the history of our country, by the way, spurned our most trusted and longstanding Gulf partners, and I can say partners worldwide, one of our great, great partners, no matter who we look to. And we have great partners in the world, but we have none stronger and nobody like the gentleman that's right before me. He's your greatest representative, greatest representative.
Now, you wouldn't be wrong to see that as a proof of the sovereign alliance, as we have discussed over the years, that there is coordination between these sovereign nationalist oriented anti-regime nations. They are working in concert to bring down the centralized top-down system of control, the rules-based international liberal world order. What more do you need to see? Honestly, I think the case has been totally made. I think the case was made years ago, which is why I've been so adamantly on board with it. But come on, what more do you need? Tweeter Trash over on YouTube, a super chat, $2. I'm usually at work when you're on. Good to see you. Good to see you too. That is the first time I've ever noticed a super chat on YouTube. So I guess we are in a new era. Crushing it. Thank you. Okay. Where are we? All right. A few more clips left, and then we'll get on out of here.
Reached a historic trade agreement with the United Kingdom, and over the weekend we reached a breakthrough agreement with China. Both outstanding deals. China's agreed. We have to get it down. We have to get the little details down. And Scott, you're going to work on that very hard, but China's agreed to open up to the United States for trade and everything else. But they have to do it, so we'll see what happens. But we had a very, very good meeting with both of those countries.
So there is another element, China. And as I said earlier, Trump, or mentioned earlier, Trump with the sanctions on Syria.
And friends of mine, people that I have a lot of respect for in the Middle East, I will be ordering the cessation of sanctions against Syria in order to give them a chance at greatness.
That is quite an ovation. I mean, we've been hearing about Syrian refugees, the Syrian civil war. We know we have the puppet that they have in there now, Al-Jilani or Al-Shara, depending on how you call him, former ISIS or Al-Qaeda terrorist who's totally the real leader. And then Bashar al-Assad is obviously going to come back in the future. Easing those sanctions might be the last piece of allowing the true government of the people of Syria to kind of take their place on the world stage and in the world economy.
Oh, what
I mean, that was quite an ovation. So that is obviously an issue that the people in that room care a great deal about. Mohammed bin Salman crossed his hands over his heart in praise and thanks. This is the closing of the Trump speech. It's incredible.
Together, we will succeed together, we will win together, and we will always be friends. Thank you. So, Mohammed, I want to thank you again very much for having me. And as a representative of what I think is the greatest nation in the world, we are with you all the way, and you have a tremendous future. Thank you very much. And please pay my respects to your father. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Best Trump rally ever. I mean, that is just fantastic. The picture, you could see the smile. Mohammed bin Salman looks like he genuinely loves and respects Donald Trump. And I think that the feeling there is mutual. What an incredible event. I mean, that's the sort of thing that if you understand the tenor of geopolitics and what's going on in the world today, like that's the sort of thing as an American to be quite proud of. This is a little bit aside from that. Over the weekend, this was at the Jubilee event for the Pope, I guess. So YMCA being played all over the place. Did Trump have a hand in the whole Pope thing? Maybe. Everybody started talking about how his brother was super based over the weekend. People getting very upset. And we'll leave off here wondering if there is perhaps another sword dance coming today. I haven't seen video of it yet, but this was from this evening. Or, you know, today for us, but this evening over there. I guess yesterday at this point. So maybe we'll get some video of a sword dance at some point. I don't know if it's happened or not. I guess we'll talk about that on Friday, potentially. Before we get out of here, let me also bring you a word from Truth Social, one of the social media sites where I still participate. You can find me on Truth Social at I'm Your Moderator. If you're looking for a great place online for news, discussion, and entertainment, then check out Truth Social, Donald Trump's social media website. You'll get breaking news stories and commentary from top media figures. If you want to see Trump's legendary Truth Social posts, then get on Truth Social today. Join a growing community of patriots on a free speech platform designed to avoid censorship and cancellation by big tech. Make your voice heard. Join the movement. Join Truth Social. And join me on over there. And checking the chats one last time before I get out of here to make sure that I didn't miss anyone's rants or super chats, as it were. Whoa! Magic Mike, $5 super chat over on YouTube. Let's make it number 2. Much love, Chris. Thank you very much, Magic Mike. And to those of you in the Substack chat, I hope you had a good time as well. And I will see you on Friday. Same reasonable time on the Same Reasonable Podcast Network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic. And Joe Biden was obviously never president.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
What's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
Down. We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What? In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com. And for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the rain.